Okay. All right, now it's streaming, so she can let them in now.
It's recording and streaming.
Very good. All right, Mr. Gibson, take it away.
Okay, so first up, we have the audit presentation, which will be provided to us by Banks, Finley, White. And we have here with us Mr. Jeff White, who is the lead audit partner, and Mr. Olsey White. And this is one agenda item, and it's an action item that the board is required to vote. You have to vote to accept, or this subcommittee has to vote to receive the audit report. And the next presentation I'll put up will be their actual audit presentation. Dr. Swoop, are we good to go?
Yes, we are.
Okay, I don't see the auditors in the session.
Brittany. They're in.
All right. All right, Mr. White, welcome to our audit session and our board of trustees audit committee presentation. And I've got your presentation up, so you can take it away, and you give me the cue and I'll keep your slides moving.
Okay, thank you, Clayton. Can you hear me okay? Okay, very good. Okay, so we've completed our audit for the year ended September 30, 2020. And so the items that we want to discuss are about 7 items that cover from the standpoint of the requirements all the way down to the results of the audit. So I want to do a little overview of the audit, talk a little bit about audit scope, talk about audit responsibilities between our firm as the independent auditor and, of course, Alabama A&M University Management. Then I will do a summary of the audit results, talk a little bit about the management representation letter, and then talk about some of the communication that we have to issue to the board or those charged with governance. And then finally, we'll have a little time for questions and answers. However, during my presentation, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to stop me and ask your question. Okay, moving on. Next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of an overview of the audit, we, of course, have audited the financial statements. We conducted both a financial and a compliance audit. And then in terms of, just what the purpose of the whole audit is, first of all, the audit is required for the Board of Trustees. They're the ones who are in charge of governance for the university. State law requires it. There are federal regulations under the government auditing standards that require it. There are federal regulations under the Single Audit Act that require an audit. There are federal regulation and uniform compliance requirements that are also required under the uniform guidance. Then, of course, federal and state agencies that provide funding for you also require audit. And then, of course, lastly, but not necessarily the last, in terms of direct requirement, is your creditors on your bonded and notes payable. Next slide. Okay, so in terms of the audit scope, as I said, we completed the audit, and it's divided in the report within several sections. First of all, there are some letter reports within the document on page 1 and 2. There's the report on the financial statements, and of course, the financial statements are the statement of financial position, which is your balance sheet, statement of activities, which is basically your P&L, your statement of cash flows, which shows how cash changed from one year to the next, and then there are some very lengthy disclosures that are in the notes to the financial statements that provide some additional information about accounting policies, principles, practices, overview of the university, and some details about some of the transactions. One of the largest footnotes within the document is the note that discusses the pension funds and the OPEB funds, which are really out of the control of the university. And then there's another large note on the new accounting standards that are coming up in 2021, 22, 23, and 24 that have to be implemented at some point. There's some lengthy discussion on the debt that the university has. I won't say complicated, but there's some detailed discussion on that. And then, of course, there's also the financial statements that relate to the foundation and the Trust for Educational Excellence in detail that roll up to the main financial statements that I talk about in terms of the opinion on pages 1 and 2. And then on the next slide, there's also 2 letter reports within the document that cover internal controls and compliance. They're on page 66 through 69. And then there's this year we added a supplementary schedule as required, and that deals with the university share, proportionate share of the net pension liability, in the whole state system. And then their proportionate share of the OPEB liability, some detailed information about that. And then, of course, on page 70 through 74, there's the schedule of federal awards, which presents in detail about $103 million of federal funds that the university received and had to administer during this fiscal year. So the next slide.
And just for the
I wanna
benefit
talk
of the
about-
board.
I'm sorry.
Just for the benefit of the board, the audit report is also in the Audit and Investment Committee folder for those who may want to follow along side by side. Okay.
All right, so I'm looking at the next slide, on slide number 6, talking about the responsibilities. There's a division of responsibilities between our firm as independent auditors and, of course, university management. On our side, our responsibility was to express an opinion on the financial statements, as well as on what we call the CFA, which is the Schedule of Expenditures of Federal Awards. And of course, all those have to be prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. The second thing was to perform the audit in accordance with the standards, government auditing standards. We did that. We maintained our independence and objectivity and a attitude of professional skepticism throughout the audit. We were required to report on internal control and on compliance, and we did that. We were required to report on the major federal programs that the university administered during the year and under the uniform guidance, and report on that, and of course we did. So on the next slide, Alabama A&M responsibilities is the management has a responsibility to, first of all, prepare and take responsibility for the financial statements and the CFA. Management did that, did a great job of preparing the financial statements, got better and better, even note disclosures and the MD&A, just lots of improvement in financial reporting. And we were very happy with that. Management was also required to establish and maintain an effective system of internal control. That was done. They were also required to make sure that management themselves, like the president is required to make sure that the management under him is competent and reliable, and that was done. Required to prevent and detect fraud, and then to disclose to us as the auditors any deficiencies that management already knows exist in their systems of internal control and compliance. So moving to the next slide, the summary. I want to summarize the audit results. Okay, so this audit is divided into 2 pieces, one the financial audit and the other compliance audit. On the financial audit side, we have issued an unmodified report on the financial statements. Unmodified is the best possible report you can get. We did not identify any significant deficiencies in internal control that could have affected those financial statements, nor with compliance that could have affected those financial statements. And so we have no issues of non-compliance as it relates to laws and regulations. So moving to the next slide, we have the audit results on the federal awards programs. That's the single audit performed under the uniform guidance, which is a federal requirement. Okay, so as it relates to the administration, internal controls related to the administration of those programs, no deficiencies were identified, none that we would consider to be material weaknesses. The opinion that we issued on compliance is unmodified. Again, unmodified means that's the best opinion you can get. And what it basically says is that the university complied with the major terms and conditions of the federal grants and contracts. Can't get any better than that. There was no question costs or no disallowed costs reported or identified. As I said earlier, there was about $103 million of federal monies, federal programs that were administered during the year. We audited 20% of that, which is the requirement, because you are a low-risk auditee, which was about $3 million of federal programs, and that included the Cooperative Extension Service, the State Administration Matching Grant, the Higher Education Institution Grant, and then the Higher Education Stabilization Fund. And again, Alabama A&M is a low-risk auditee, and that's best. That means you are, if there's new funding that comes online, you're at the top of the list because you've proven that you have the ability to administer those funds in accordance with the regulations. So moving to that next slide. So kind of covered the audit results, clean opinion on the financials, no problems with internal control, no problem with compliance, be it laws and regulations that generally govern operations and that affect the financial statements, or federal compliance with the federal programs. So in the part of the audit, we request management make certain representations to us. And I think we issued management provided us with an 8-page management representation letter. That standard covers all of the requirements in terms of the conduct of an audit. And the key ones that we were looking for are that where management will represent to us that they have fulfilled their responsibility as it relates to the terms and conditions of the audit engagement letter and their responsibility for preparation of the financial statements. Okay, and of course with the accounting principles, management complied with that. There were no all material transactions. Management represented that all material transactions that occurred during 2020 are in the financial statements. They disclosed to us any issues with risk assessment. That means looking at your internal controls and making sure they're top notch, if you will. They're required to report to us fraud, and they represented that they did. And finally, the other one was they indicated they had no knowledge of suspected fraud. And we don't just take that representation. That representation actually comes after the fact, after we have actually done our audit work. So we were comfortable with that. When we had to have that representation letter before we could release the report. So in addition to you got the audit report, the bound audit report copy, and then we also issue what we call the SAS 114 letter. This is a communication to those charged with governance. It's only issued to the audit committee and the board of trustees. It's not issued to any other entity outside of the university, and it's not required to be. It's solely for your own benefit as trustees and you being in charge of governance. So some of the key things in that letter is that we are communicating that you are responsible for the selection and use of accounting policies and procedures, and all those are disclosed in note 2. There were no new accounting policies that had to be implemented that were material in terms of affecting the financials. There are some accounting estimates within the financial statements. One, accumulated depreciation is an estimate. Allowance for uncollectible promises to give us an estimate, as well as the actuarial calculations on the pension funds. Now, the university has absolutely no control over those actuarial calculations. Those are done by the state of Alabama through actuary, and those are audited through the state of Alabama by an independent accounting firm. But those estimates are just that, they're estimates. And so the numbers that are in the financials that derive the pension liability and the OPEB liability come from those estimates. There were no difficulties encountered in conducting the audit, even though we had to do a lot of work remotely and management had to work remotely. We feel we had a better process in terms of communication that we had when it's face-to-face. It's amazing how this new technology, remote technology, can put you right in somebody's face without having to walk down the hall or call them up for a meeting. It actually worked out to be a very great tool. And I'm sure Clayton can attest to that. So next, the next slide. Okay, so there are no misstatements in the financial statements. All the adjustments that have been required to be made by management were made. Management did an excellent job preparing the financial statements. There were no disagreements with management. As I said before, we requested that management representation letter. We got that. And as far as we know, management did not consult another CPA on an issue of conflict because we actually had no issues of conflict because management was following generally accepted accounting principles. So next slide, there is some supplemental information in the report, and I talked about that on page, I think it was 64 and 65, where we include some additional information on the pensions. Then, of course, there's the information on the CFA. We do look at this information. We don't have to audit the pension information, but we do audit, of course, the single audit information on the CFA. But we do follow the appropriate limited procedures that are required for the supplemental information. And on that next slide, as I said earlier, this letter, this communication with those charged with governance, and I'm just kind of paraphrasing it on these slides, but you get a 2-page letter. That letter is only intended for management. It's not required to be issued to anyone outside the university. Okay, so some financial highlights. And a lot of these highlights that I'm talking about are going to be included in the management discussion and analysis starting on page 5, and I think it goes through page 16. But a few highlights. And I want to start out by saying that financially, this is by far the best year the university has had in since since 85, since as far as I can go back, because dollars are different from dollars back in 85, but you would think that in this age of coronaviruses now, that is not over and may never be over entirely, did quite well. So look at this. At September 30, 2020, comparing it to 2019, the college had total assets of $278 million over $269 for 2019. The deferred outflows of resources, those are primarily tied into the pension fund. Those increased to 20 million compared to 16 million. And what this is this is going to be costs that's going to be amortized over the next 5 years and won't be charged off in this current year. It'll be charged off in the next 5 years. But on the other side of that, you got $32 million worth of inflows of resources that are going to be charged off as income over the next 5 years. So these two are going to offset each other, and the effect is going to be an improvement to the university's net position. But here's the real number. That last bullet down there where it says the university's net position increased by $19 million. So $19 million increase this year over roughly a $9 million increase over 2019. So 19 million good to 2020 and 9 million for 2019. And a lot of that is the result of funding, federal increases in federal funding, increases in tuition fees, increases in state grants and appropriations, coronavirus assistance. But the bigger chunk of it probably relates to the fact that the pension fund changed so much. And I'm going to show you that in just a moment. So in the next slide, talked about the management and discussion and analysis. And this is where you can find this information on page 15 to 16. And this year, instead of showing just a comparison of 2 years, 2020 and 19, we also show 2020, 2019, and 2018. So you got actually 3 years of comparison where you can see the university's growth. So it's a few of the highlights on the next slide. You got an increase in cash of 4.5 million. Your capital assets increased as a result of construction and construction in progress, 7.2 million. Notes payable, the debt only actually decreased by $648,000 net. There was an increase in the outflows of resources. As I said earlier, these are going to be charged off in the next period. Deferred inflows, then this is that $20 million big swing that is partly part of the growth in the net assets. That's going to be charged off as income over the next 5 years. The pension liability, the net pension liability for the regular pension funds increased by 7.8, but the OPEB decreased by $27.8 million based on actuarial calculations. So they're estimating you're going to have to pay out less on your other pension obligations than you would had in 2019 previously. The pension liability went from 71.9 to 79.7 million. Tuition and fees increased by 4.8 million. The federal grants and contracts went up by 10.2 million. State appropriations by 4.1. And here's your operating expenses. They only increased by $2.9 million. Your total operating expenses over 2019 only increased by $2.9 million. And so that all equates into this big increase in your net position to the tune of 19.2 million compared to 9.4 million in 2019. And then on the next slide, we got some little graphs with some pretty little colors on it to kind of show you, compare 19 and 18. I'm sorry, 20 and 2019. One that covers the net assets. Here's the one that covers the on the next page that covers the tuition and fees. On the next slide, the pink, of course, representing is pink on my screen. The pink representing 2020 and the blue representing 2019. So you can see pink has outgrown the blue. And then the next slide, I want to talk a little bit, and this is disclosed in the audit report. There's in the MD&A, the university discussion on the impact of coronavirus. And there's also some discussion in the footnotes to the financial statements as required by the accounting reporting standards, some discussion on coronavirus and the impact that it had. And I don't want to go through the whole thing, but there's a continued impact. So there was an impact, obviously, on 2020. Then there's going to be an impact in 2021. And of course, y'all know there's some new funding that just came out, and I have not had time to research to see if colleges and universities is going to be a part of that funding. But I know some of our governmental clients, we've had some meetings with them, and they will be a part of that funding. So, that's the biggest thing is being able to cover lost revenue because of coronavirus. And on the next slide, it continues talking about that. And so we expect that in 2021 that there's still going to be some impact from coronavirus, even moving into the 22, maybe the 21-22 fiscal year. Also within the report, we have one subsequent event that is a real positive news, and that is the fact that under the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021, which I'm sure y'all are aware of, there's a very high probability that this roughly $80 million of debt, I think it's 80 million, right, Clayton, of debt that 80 million of debt that the college, the university will probably will be forgiven. And so this is going to turn out to be a huge gain in terms of operations. So when we write that debt off, you actually recognize a gain. And so that's going to add $80 million to your net position and further just putting the college in really great financial state. So that's kind of it. It took me a little longer than I intended because I know you got a lot of other business, but let me sum it up real quick. Clean reports on financials, no problems with internal controls, no problems with compliance, no problems with the conduct of the audit. Management did a great job of preparing the financials and providing us with the information we need to get happy with the numbers and be able to express these opinions that we've expressed. And of course, operating results were really good, even in light of this pandemic. And hopefully that will continue to be so. So if there are any questions that y'all might have regarding the audit and the conduct of the audit, I will be more than happy to answer those questions.
I would like to say one thing, and this doesn't necessarily relate directly to the audit, but in my haste to start the meeting, I didn't recognize the chair, who is Trustee Ball. And I just wanted to apologize for that. And anything that you need to say at this point, Trustee Ball, I turn it over to you and to finish the meeting out and this part of the meeting out. And I just want to apologize that I did not recognize you as the chair to get this started.
You know, one of the things as a team, you don't get bothered by things like that. But no, thank you for recognizing such, but not to. I know he's coming to the conclusion of his report. I don't want to interrupt him. So, Mr. White, let me let you complete your comments, and we'll conclude and turn this back over to Clayton.
Okay, just to complete the last thing I want to bring out is, as I indicated that on one page of the report, back in the footnotes, at footnote number 21 of the report, there are probably, I'm just the top of my head, 10 to 11 new accounting standards that will be implemented starting in 2021. And the coronavirus actually delayed the implementation of a lot of these. And so the Government Accounting Standards Board issued an extension in GASB 95, so they now have to be, they didn't have to be implemented in 20. They now will be moved to 21 and 22 and 23. So there's a lot of work that has to be done on the part of management to determine the impact of these new accounting standards on the university's financial statements. But again, everything went well in the audit. No fraud to report, no abuse, no illegal acts that we were able to identify. And we believe that the audit went well and the communication was stellar.
Mr. White, I want to take a moment to thank you and your team, because this goes both ways. We have our team, we got Dr. Batiste, and she has a very competent staff of people that pull the information, and they're getting faster and faster, and they got even faster despite the coronavirus, and they're doing a great job. But we also turn the information over to you guys as auditors, and appreciate you guys being timely and responsive and working through the different items. We can call you, ask you questions, and get consultation as need be, and that's important because it helps us to get things to the right place and do it the way we would want it to be done. So I want to thank you and OC and the rest of your team members as well. So.
And as we conclude this, Clayton, the only question I have, Mr. Gibson, for you and your collaboration with Mr. White and his company is, since we did go mostly virtual, the compliance aspect of our staff working from home, were there any challenges or anything that we were able to enhance or improve as we changed or modified how we worked virtually, from your opinion?
Yeah, I'll let Dr. Batiste chime in too, but I'll give credit because 6 years ago, we actually moved to a cloud folder. So all of our audit documentation was being put in the cloud 5 years before coronavirus. And so we didn't need to pivot when it related to how we provide the documentation. It was more Zoom, and as you said, Jeff, they really are in your face in the camera. Every single week we had update meetings going through everything that was missing. Dr. Batiste, is there anything else you would add as far as the efficiencies? But I want to give credit because a lot of folks were very responsive during coronavirus, and we had to make changes too. But I got to give credit. I mean, these things were in place across campus in large part on the technology side, and Jeff and OC, they've been working with that format for a while now. So. Anything you would add, Dr. Batiste, that I missed?
No, sir. That's pretty much how we did it. We did it virtually, but we stayed on top of things, and working with Mr. White, and Mr. White made it a little, they had efficiencies and we developed our efficiencies too. So it was a good collaboration.
I can say that it's going to be difficult for us now to get our employees to come back into the office because they're enjoying working remotely, and it's I've gotten so much good feedback, not only from you guys, but from our other clients. It's going to be hard to get folks to go back to the office, I tell you.
Are you saying to the president that we should not have to go back into the office?
I'm not saying, no, I'm talking about us.
No, I think what he's saying is that this is a way of augmenting what we do.
Yes.
So that, as opposed to Mr. Gibson walking around to Dr. Batiste's office, you can simply do it via Zoom.
Right.
Save the steps. But no, we'll be returning to the office as soon as we possibly can.
I have a question.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Trustee Pickett.
I was just wondering, you mentioned, Mr. White, that that you guys don't audit the pensions, but I was wondering, is there a process for auditing pensions, or how does that work?
Yes, we do. No one, for all the entities in the state of Alabama that participate in the retirement system of Alabama, none of those organizations can audit the pension fund. The pension fund is audited separately by, they have their own independent auditor, as well as they have a licensed actuarial person who does the calculations. And so basically the state just provides the information from their audits directly to every entity, college, university, city government, county government, whoever's participating in the fund, they provide that information to them. Now, the numbers that are in that report that we get from the university gets from the actuary and from the state are adjusted based on information that the university has itself, because there's a requirement that you make pension contributions after these measurement dates that the state establishes. Like this time it was September 30, 2019. You accrue the rest of it. So you bring it up to date based on what's occurring at the university. But it is audited, but it's audited by another CPA for the whole state, and everybody just kind of has to get that information from them.
Mr. Gibson, is that something that we do, and is that reported to us?
So the state sends the information to us and every higher education institution, okay, every school system and district. We're recipients, but they do have an audit process in place.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
May I add? I think Trustee Pickett, think of it more just as a accounting entry. The university nor any state entity has any control over the retirement system. We are all required to participate in the requirement system. The Alabama retirement system manages all of that. They even determine how much we're going to pay. But under the auditing process, I guess they assume since each agency contributes, then they make you report that on your books. So it's what I like to think of it as an unfunded mandate. You know, it's something that we are required to do, but we have no control over other than to report it.
That helps. Thank you.
Yeah,
And
I
to
have
Trustee Harper for sending me some information too. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question for you, Mr. White. Who is managing the pension fund?
The retirement system of Alabama, they manage their own pension. They manage the fund. Mr. Bronner, who's the chief there, he's been managing the fund for, I don't know, 30, 40 years, I guess now. But they manage it, they invest it. They probably have some investment managers on their team that help them with that. But they do the whole deal. So it's kind of like the president said, is that you completely you have absolutely no control over the returns and the calculations. It's solely their purview, and they have responsibility for that. But there are standards, of course, that they have to comply with and follow in getting those numbers together and getting the audits done, and then, of course, in the investing activities. But they totally manage the whole deal. All the school does, the university does, is send in their check for the amount of contributions applicable to each employee that's determined by the fund itself. So whatever contributions are made are made based on that formula that the state establishes under the pension rules, and the university makes their payment. And then from that point on, the calculations are made, and the numbers that I was talking about on page, I think it was 64 and 65, these are numbers that are applicable only to the university. It's your share of the number, but the whole fund is audited, statewide.
Yeah, so I guess so then, Dr. Gibson, with the pension fund being managed by the state, our foundational money is different than what's managed. And so we have a different person managing that. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Very different things.
Okay.
And we have an $80 million liability on our books. I'm looking at it here side by side for the pension. And it literally was just put there like 4 years ago. Before it wasn't, the accounting overlords do stuff like that. Before it wasn't on our books. It's whatever they tell us to put on our books, really. Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Mr. Gibson, do you have anything else to report in this?
Nothing else to report. Just the action item for the committee. The recommendation would be that the subcommittee approve the acceptance of this audit report and for approval to the full board in our meeting tomorrow.
Okay. Do we have a motion from the committee to be able to approve?
Motion to approve, Ginger Harper.
Trustee.
Or do we have a second? Do we have a second?
Trustee Crunkleton is on the committee. He'd have to second.
Trustee,
Okay.
can you unmute your mic, Trustee Crunkleton?
Or just do a thumbs up.
He does. Okay. Thumbs up.
So I assume there's no question, and from the committee, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it's been seconded and approved. All right. Do we have any other items of business, action items?
No, sir. That's it from us. Thank you.
Compliments to you and your staff, and now we will turn it back over to Trustee Watts or Trustee Williams.
Trustee Williams is on now.
Excuse me.
Thank you, Trustee Ball, and thank you, Trustee Watts, for starting the meeting. With Mr. Hackett and I being the older alum, I think we were the only ones that tend to have some electronic challenges on occasions. And I had one of those this morning. So thanks for starting things, Dr. Watts. The next thing on our agenda.
I think it's
Business and finance.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, everyone. I have the honor of serving as the chair of Business and Finance. Please note that other members of the committee are Trustee Watts, Trustee Hackett, Trustee Banks, Trustee Cole, Trustee Crunkleton, and Trustee Frank Williams. Would like to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Clayton Gibson, Senior Vice President for Finance and Administration, and he will walk us through our report.
Thank you, ma'am. We have our 6 items that we will walk through on the next slide. And for the benefit of the committee, because I know we have pressure time, I'll keep moving, but stop me at any point in time if need be. All right, so the first item up is our HBCU Capital Financing Program conversation. If we move to the next slide. So the executive committee in February made a vote to approve forgiveness of the HBCU capital financing loans that were outstanding as of December 27th, 2020. They made that approval because the federal government in its coronavirus bill, which is called something different, but pretty much in their approval, their legislation that was passed December 27th, it stated that any loans under the HBCU capital financing program that had been drawn as of December 27th, 2020 were forgivable. What that means is the new residence hall loan and any other loans that we had outstanding under the program, which was pretty much everything else. All of that is being removed from our books and being forgiven. No one would not accept debt forgiveness, but because it's debt and the board has to approve debt transactions for protocol purposes, or we had the executive committee approve that forgiveness. And we're waiting on communication from the federal government to confirm that that transaction has been completed. We haven't yet gotten the confirmation, but what they said 3 weeks ago is that sometime between March 19 and the end of the month, it would be completed. So it might have been completed already. Those numbers at the bottom of this slide, you can see the loans that we took out in 2015, and the residence hall is, I want to say 2015-7, that 33,580,000. And then the 2019-5 loan for $4 million, that is the portion of the money that we borrowed for the new event center that we had drawn as of December 27th. Again, the total loan was $70 million, but you know, they fund it as we make requisition draws every month. So as of December 27th, 2020, we had only drawn $4.3 million. And again, because construction, the majority of the construction actually is occurring all 2021, running into June of 2022. Any questions on that before I move on to the next slide? And Dr. Swoop, if you can move. And so this is a timeline. I won't belabor it, but we kind of talked about these items. Let's move to our next slide, please. Our budget update. Mr. Jackson is not on here. I'll give a brief overview while all of my team members are let into the Zoom. Overall, if there are any questions that came out of this analysis here, I'll be happy to answer it. But the first thing is tuition and fees at the very top. Last fall, we had a lot of different scenarios in place that we were a part of in the June discussion. We weren't sure what was going to happen, how good, bad, or you know, negative this environment would be. But our enrollment actually came in pretty close. It was a slight decrease, but pretty close for budget purposes. So you're seeing here on your screen that we're pretty close to our budget, and our expectation is that with summer school revenue coming in, we should be able to close that tuition and fees gap from as far as the top level of revenue is concerned. I'm looking through here for anything else that jumps out at me. Unless there are any other questions, I'll move to the next slide. Mr. Jackson, are you in here? Are there any comments you would want to make on this slide?
I am in here, sir. As far as comments, I can go through the budget to actual if you like.
No, only questions if need be.
Okay, no questions.
Move to our next slide. The Auxiliary Services Fund. Mr. Jackson, you want to walk us through this in brief? You don't have to go through each line item, but just top level highlights for our board. Okay.
The fact that our occupancy was lower.
Just because his connection is going in and out, I'll just give you. Hey, Mr. Jackson, your connection is going in and out.
Mr. Gibson,
I'll give them the overview, which is that we were 40% off on occupancy because of the coronavirus. So we had to leave close to half of our beds in the residence halls empty to protect, public health, and also because a number of students chose not to stay on campus in the environment. So that had a traumatic impact on our revenue. It's not just housing, it's food services, because everyone that stays on campus has a meal plan. So we were off $10 million there. The good thing is the majority of that gap should be closed because there was funding under the CARES Act that allows us to get reimbursed for lost revenue. So there's a gap there, it's legitimate. We tightened up our expenses, and there are reductions on the meal service, the meal plans as well, because again, the less meals we have, the less meal expense we incur. But overall, our expectation is that between the general fund and auxiliary fund, and when we say auxiliary fund, it's just standalone business operations. So housing, food service, all the things that are separate from the core educational activities. Overall, we feel we'll be in a very good position from everything we're seeing come the end of this fiscal year. And we don't have a projection, but the majority of our fiscal activity happens between September, between October to May. I mean, we've collected the tuition, the fees, the majority of the expenses have been incurred. So it's not hard for us to make a reasonable projection that this fiscal year we should be able to hold our own. All right, our next slide. All right, let's talk about the previous slide, Dr. Swoop, I believe was our CARES Act funding. And for disclosure purposes, we're putting up here every single dollar that we know of that we've received any sort of notification of receiving as it relates to coronavirus. The first line you'll see is the student emergency grants that we received, and we're pretty much a pass-through entity for that. So we've gotten, or we were awarded, because it's not like it's put in our bank account, we were awarded $8.8 million. And the federal government basically said to every university, take that money and give it straight to students. You can figure out your criteria, but to the extent possible, we want to have it driven based on needs. So students that have the highest needs should get more. And we've done that. And we've used the Pell Grant ratio, the EFC score, expected financial contribution score, which is a federal score that's calculated for every student based on, the tax return, the other information the federal government has for them. And I said 8.8. We haven't spent all of it because we've left some back, and that's an error. We left some back for next semester, but in short, we're a pass-through. We got the money and we awarded it to students in the amounts of, I think, 500, 750, and 1,000, all based on need levels. That second category, in large part, has been used to, is the minority serving institution funds. In large part, we've used that to fund the room and board refunds that we had to give back to students in March. When they left early, we gave them back prorated refunds. But we also have given a lot of money in student aid, a lot of money. In this environment, a lot of our students and their parents, restaurants are closed. A lot of our students get jobs around town in restaurants and different industries. And a lot of these businesses are closed or they've cut back on employment. So we've seen high needs across our students. So we've spent a lot of money from our CARES dollars supporting student needs to help keep them in school, given this harsh environment and the disruption it's had on their finances. And then the institutional portion, those funds in large part remain, and it's being allocated towards, again, technology that enables us to continue to provide learning effectively remotely, purchasing of PPE and sanitizer and other things. And the bottom two pots there, those are both pots of funds that came from the state. The state got the money from the federal government and they allocated out some to every institution. We got some. and we spent hours, and Dr. Clark might talk about some of this, but we use hours to, in part, recable all the academic buildings. So we had fiber that ran to every academic building, and we were fine. But what happened in coronavirus, now you had a bunch of professors in all the offices streaming at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and the network wasn't designed for that. We were forced to upgrade our the infrastructure in the actual academic buildings to ensure that we could continue to deliver remote learning. And then, of course, laptops. We got laptops for all of our students, and students who weren't on campus, we mailed laptops to them to ensure that they, even if there's a disruption, they can continue their education uninterrupted. Next slide, please. Other direction. Beautiful, thank you, Dr. Swim. So our financial goals, and the next 3-4 slides is talking a little bit about the things we've been working hard at accomplishing over the past 8 years. And sometimes we work hard at things, and some things we accomplish faster than others. But this is really designed to kind of give the board a top level overview of what we've seen and accomplished during these recent years of the president's administration. So one goal we set was improved cash on hand. We need to have cash on hand, because you think of your car, you get a flat tire, you shouldn't be crying. If you don't have money for a flat tire, that means you didn't plan for emergencies, and emergencies are gonna come. You know, I always say, you can tell if we are being prudently managed really in a crisis. In a crisis, we should not be responsive. We should be able to, yes, it's gonna be disrupted, but it should be better than the situation. Did we not have a proper financial plan in place? So we want to be able to respond to emergencies and provide a hedge in case there's economic duress. We want to have sustained investment in our infrastructure. If there's no good infrastructure, and that's the physical buildings, that's the information technology, then it affects our ability to retain students who are coming from a lot of high schools that in the past have looked better than our campus have looked. So we set a priority to improve our infrastructure across campus. No big one loan, no big one even. It was going to require sustained investment every year and consistency in order to make that happen. We also set a goal to diversify our revenue sources. And it provides, again, a hedge against disruptive events, and a debt service coverage ratio in excess of 1.2. And I'll talk a little bit about that. If we can move to our next slide. So this is our cash on hand. Go back one slide, Dr. Swoop, please. Okay, all right, go ahead, you're good. So this is our cash on hand, and I went back, I think I did about 15 years based on the data I had. So you can see here in 2006, and this is important because you can't fake cash. Cash is either you have it or you don't. Meaning, to me, this is the best indicator of what the board has achieved over the past 12 years during this period, this administration. In 2010, you can see right there, and this is real data, we had $500,000 on hand. At the end of the fiscal year, that was our cash eye. And Dr. Batiste will tell you, at the end of September, you got your tuition revenue, you just collected all your revenue from students. And we had $500,000. Say what you want about good or bad, but that was, things were in a tight situation. And then from there, the initiatives that the board, the president put in place to really restructure the operations and take emergency action. And let me say this, because I wasn't there then. People don't like emergency actions, and different groups across campus protested. If that had not happened, you would not have had a university. And it's easier to say this now because we're past that situation, but that's important because, the faculty, staff, different groups that, sometimes there's protests, and whenever there's these, changes to enhance the university. But thankfully on our campus, we had the support of our different constituency groups, the faculty, staff, or board, and we were able to put procedures in place to improve our cash on hand every single year consistently. In 2014, I thought this was interesting because we hadn't yet gotten the big uptick we had, but back then when Moody's did our ratings review, and I think there were about 3 of you, I know Trustee Robinson, Trustee Williams, and so forth were on the board then, and they interviewed board members. I remember very well, the chair was interviewed and such, and Moody's did not give us an uptick. I think they gave us a flat rating and a flat out. But back then they made that, it appears that their refocused academic programs and carefully managed expenses. And they made a projection, 7 years ago that based on what they were seeing, the university should be able to grow and refocus and continue to improve. And true to what they said, the institution and this board has kept that journey. In 2017, there was that slight decrease there. 2017, 2018, we took money from operations to finish up the residence hall because that's the way we budgeted it. We got a $30 million or $31 million loan, and then the construction plus the equipment and everything was going to come to 40 million. So we had budgeted 9 million, which we saved $3 million per year during the construction period. And that's why you have that slight decrease there. So, yeah, thank you, ma'am. This is our annual budget. I feel like there's a slide. Go back for me, Dr. Swoop. Go back one slide. No, I'm not saying it. All right, keep going.
Can you come in for 1 second?
This is our annual budget, and really what we're showing here is the growth of the institution over the years. Right now we have $300 million in assets, right, across campus. $300 million. For insurance purposes, I think Jeff is on here. We have, I want to say, have $500 to $600 worth of assets insured. But for GAAP purposes, it's depreciation, so it's on your books at a lower rate. But for insurance purposes, we actually have over $500 million insured with the state insurance fund, right? So you can see here how the board has grown the budget has grown between 2012, which is a 10-year period, right through to this last budget that this board approved, which was $192 million. And that big spike you see between 2016 and 2017, that was the normal institutional budget plus $30 million that we had borrowed for the new residence hall. And in fairness, we could have had a spike this year, just in the middle of coronavirus planning. That was the last thing on our minds. But in reality, we're going to spend 192 million plus, I don't know, 45 million this year. So our actual expenditures this year would be close to $250 million because of the new residence hall and other expenses that we're incurring. And again, good or bad, big budget, small budget, it's not really the big thing here. It's just to show, our budget has grown. And as your budget grows, you have to increase the amount of cash you have on hand, because in a disruptive environment, you still need to be able to make payroll and utilities and other essential expenses. Next slide. So over these next 4 slides, you'll have a general synopsis of various projects that the board, the president, the administration has focused on over the past, I want to say 10-year period. And there were others, but sometimes we don't put things on the slide unless we can get pretty good data. And the further back you go, the harder it gets. But you can see here coming through early on, we had less cash flow available, right? So we were doing projects, but it's not at the rate that you see right now, where in the buildings and grounds and other presentations, you'll see how it's maybe 40 different projects moving at the same time. Next slide. All right, again, won't belabor this, move to the next slide. And then this is the last of the 4 slides, which you can read, but these slides are exclusive of the 30 or 40 projects that you will hear talked about later on and seen presented as being under construction. So the new event center, for example, is not on here. The welcome center, all the work we're doing across campus is not even on this list. Between now and maybe this time next year, this list will increase by like 50%. So it's a really good time to be here on campus, be a board member and member of the administration, seeing the tremendous outcome that has come from having stable, steady leadership, and that credit goes to the board and to the president. To our next slide, please. So this gives us a good overview of our revenue diversification goal. And what you should keep in mind here is you want to have a good balance of tuition revenue, revenue from the state, and revenue from federal or other external sources, because at any given moment, something can change. The state can say, hey, we're going to cut your appropriation by 10% because it's a harsh economic environment, right? And we're first forced to adjust in a short space of time, right? So what we have here back in 2012, and again, I did a 10-year or maybe 9-year period. The tuition and fees, if you make it a little bit smaller, squeeze it up just a little bit, the tuition and fees made up 27%. So our tuition and fees have stayed constant. And overall, most of our expenses or expenditures have been constant. You see, housing and dining has increased to 14%. That's important because we derive a good profit off of our housing and dining operation, and in particular, the housing operation does good for campus. So that's why it was a concern of ours, myself, Mr. Jackson, Dr. Patisse, and others, when we were talking about the COVID and the impact, because any decline in our housing and dining is not just a break-even operation. That operation provides a profit that we use to fund faculty salaries and other things across campus. But the growth in the housing and dining, which we call the auxiliary services, that is a good thing. And overall, I'll keep it moving in the interest of time. Unless there are any other questions, please stop me. I know I'm moving through here quickly. Our line of credit update on the next slide, we have no change there. We still got the full capacity available of 8 million, and the regions is committed to 12 million if need be. Thankfully, we didn't have the circumstances that necessitated that. Our next slide. And our departmental initiatives, and I believe we start with the Comptroller's Office. Dr. Patisse, you want to walk us on this slide in brief?
Good morning again. Just briefly, some of the initiatives that we're doing in the Comptroller's Office with student accounts. We are utilizing heavily on social media to alert students, trying to stay ahead of them with things that we discover, changes and reminders. Accounts payable, we've through numerous checks and balances, we were reducing our TIN errors. In 2019, we had 102 and we were down to 6 this past year. Also with our travel unit, that's a separate unit that we created last year, just prior to the coronavirus. So that particular unit now has a targeted outstanding list from 362 to now 24. And it's also decreased from that since this report was given. But this is just some of the highlights that are in the Controller's Office presently.
Dr. Swoop, can you give me the screen share power very briefly? Okay, bear with me. This was a slide that we also wanted to highlight here, and I'm going back a little bit, but it provides a good pictorial illustration for simplicity. That blue line is the best practice. That's where we want to be as an institution. We want to be in a position where we have at least 3 months of operating cash. And this is important because you can see how many years it took us to get there. It wasn't a quick exercise. It was hard work on an annual basis. And we're so fortunate because we had the support of the board and the president and his management strategy, that resulted in us being able to, over the years, one piece at a time. And this is important because going into the future, we just got here, right? So schools generally try to have between 3 to 6 months. And we got there, I want to say, in fiscal 19, but that continued prudence is going to be important on an ongoing basis to sustain this trend in the future. Debt service coverage ratio trend, again, the goal is to have a ratio of 1.2. What this ratio is showing us is that we need to have enough cash flow after expenses to pay our principal and interest. So if our principal and interest totals to $5 million, what the lenders are saying is you should have $6 million available, meaning they don't want to see you have 5 million. You're barely making it. So any small thing that happens, you're not going to be able to pay that debt service. So you can see here over the years, we've also maintained that trend. And again, it's not our goal to necessarily have it at 4, but sometimes you have a really strong operating performance that can drive that result. All right. Mr. Chamwizi, you want to walk us through the bus wash and the progress there? Dr. Swoop, you can resume your sharing, your control of the screen. Mr. Chamwizi, do I have you on here? Slide 24, keep going.
He's on.
Okay, I'll walk through, and Marcia, you can just interrupt once you get on. If you can move move forward to his slide. So this is a schematic of what the bus wash facility is going to look like. And this is something that Mr. Chemweezy has worked at diligently over the past few years. And we've gotten the funding, we've had the funding. The tricky thing was trying to ensure the project was can be accomplished within the budget, you know, when you add the grant dollars plus the institutional match. So it did take some effort and, you know, a lot of work from our engineering team, Mr. Chemweezy and Mr. Chip and others, to try to get it to that point. To the next slide. And this is where we are, and this is maybe a month dated, so it's a little progressed from there, but you can see we've got the shed is up, and that area where you see the closing door, that's the area where the buses would drive through, which will be shown as well on the next slide. That's the inside. That's, you know, next slide, please. Okay. And so this is an overview, and there's some other slides that some other pictures that we'll show you at the next meeting that has the undercarriage, so you can actually see the full layout of the actual bus wash. But very shortly, that thing is going to be finished, and we can actually start washing our buses on campus. And something that we're working on, Mr. Chemweezy is working on as well, is trying to see if we can find a way to monetize that asset. For example, there's a lot of farms around here, and they got tractors that need to be washed, need to be cleaned, and there's not a lot of facilities that do stuff other than just cars. So we're trying to find ways to intelligently monetize our assets as well. Now we'll Mr. Robinson, do you want to talk to us about this slide?
Sure. Good morning. Just quickly, the risk management initiatives. One of them, what we're doing is we reassembled the enterprise risk management team. A couple of years ago, McGriff Services, who is our insurance broker, they provided us with a tool to use to help us gauge whatever risk might be that we foresaw coming up. And what we decided to do is use this survey to help us gauge what risk may be coming up after this period of COVID. I would say, and you probably heard that the university has done pretty well during the pandemic, but we want to get ahead of whatever risk or issues could be coming up after the pandemic. So what we did was supplied a key group of people here on campus, administrators, faculty, and staff, with a survey that addresses financial risk, operational risk, and strategic risk. And what we wanted to do was find out from them what it was that they thought could be our biggest challenge after we recover from this pandemic. And so it's working out pretty well. We've gotten some good feedback. And what we plan to do, of course, is to use this information to hopefully head off whatever challenges that may be coming up, address them before they could become an issue, such as if it could be a rumor of a thought that there could be a problem, maybe we could head it off because we already have things in place. We may extend it to just a handful of students and other employees just to see what their thoughts are also, again, because with the goal of trying to head off whatever risk could be coming up. So that's it.
All right, if we can move to our next slide, our capital projects, and the next 2 or 3 slides. And again, none of these balances or projects were included in the listing that you guys just looked at from 2011 to 2020. So, you know, I didn't count them up, but it might be 30, 40. I don't know if Mr. Ship has a list, but unless there are any questions, I guess the big thing on there is the event center. We spent more than $2 million, but again, when we prepared the slides, the data, that was the current data as of then. We can move to our next slides. Again, stop me. All these projects, stop me if need be. All these projects are under design or under planning, or, you know, maybe by now a couple maybe at the point where we put them out there for bid. But hopefully we can return in June, hopefully, and at that point you'll see some disruption on campus because of our paving, and I'm really excited about seeing that. Paving all over campus, and it took us years to get to the point where we could get past just doing boilers and chillers and being responsive or reactive to being proactive in terms of where we're scheduling out now the replacement of our infrastructure, our roof systems, or the things that folks take for granted until it stops working. And it's millions of dollars. I want to say, separate from the event center, it might be $19 million worth of capital projects that are going on. It pretty much touches almost every building on campus. Next slide. All right, and now we'll have our, unless there's any other questions, we'll have our facilities update from Aramark. And Ms. Johnson is the manager.
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm not sure what my video, okay, it's not showing and I apologize for that. But good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Can you hear me, Mr. Gibson?
Good morning.
You're here. You. Good morning. Continue, Ms. Johnson.
Okay. The first slide that you're looking at is our evaluation tools. They are the systems that we use to actually look at and track our performance. And it also enables for the university to log into those websites and also get that data real time. Next slide, please. This slide is the work order completion slide, and it just gives you data on how many work orders we received, how many we are completing, what those work orders consist of, and it also helps us identify trends in areas of opportunity and maintenance. This I wanted to share with you because of COVID to let everyone know that Aramark is engaged in making sure that our employees are following proper protocol and that we are doing things to make sure that they're safe as well. So we put in place mandates for them in the back of the house to make sure that we are compliant. This is just a return to work checklist that Aramark implemented to make sure that all of our employees have this in the file and that they know what we have to do in order to return to work safely. This is the team we put together. This is our response team. Whenever we have an area where we have to go in and do quarantine cleaning, or after someone has reported to us that somebody had COVID or they think they have it, this team is dispatched to that area and they clean it and turn it over. During the holidays, November and December, we work with athletics because they was having some storage issues, and we did some refresh and some redesigning over in that area to try to make it more friendly for the students and for the faculty. So we installed some closets in the laundry room where each athletic department could have somewhere to store their uniforms because a lot of them didn't have that storage. We also went in and we took up the carpet. We removed the carpet in the basketball locker rooms, the ladies and the men. And we also did some enhancement, like we painted and put murals on the walls, just so it would give the students some sense of pride when they walk into that area. And the next couple of slides will just show you photos of the before and after and what we did in those locker rooms. So we also talked to some of the staff, and they didn't have an area if they brought food from home where they could actually warm it up. So we put in a microwave and a refrigerator and a small cabinet where water could be stored under it, and they could put their food in the refrigerator. We also painted the stairwells, the hallways. We went throughout the building and made some necessary improvements that would make it easier for us to clean, also easier for us to manage, and it looks better. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Johnson or any other items in the business and finance presentation before the chair moves it to the next buildings and grounds session?
In regards to Aramark, in regards to the dietary services, is that covered in this particular section or over in another committee subject?
And not covered in this session.
Okay.
No, Dr. Crosby has. It's not covered in here, but if there are questions, I don't know if the student services.
Yeah, I just need to know when the appropriate time is to ask questions about Aramark in regards to what we're doing with our dietary services. Under what section is that?
Is Dr. Yugini But if he's not, Trustee Ball, that will be on the student affairs.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm on. If the Trustee Ball, if there's a specific question, if you would give us that question, and we can have Dr. Crosby to get the answer for you by the time he reports.
And he may have it as part of his presentation. That's why I didn't want to slow the meeting down. And it was just in regards to feedback in regards to that service being provided to our students at this time, just an assessment.
Okay, very good. All right. We'll get that information to him and be sure that he addresses that.
Are there any further questions for Mr. Gibson? Okay, Mr. Gibson, thank you so much for the robust report. Kudos to you and your entire team for improving our financial position, helping us to reach best practice standards, also remaining prudent and, improving our financial position during these unprecedented times. Also remaining focused on the student and their overall experience. That is quite many things to balance there. So thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
President Pro Tem, that concludes our report.
Thank you, Trustee Harper, and to the financial team as well. Mr. Gibson spoke of the times when things were not so good. I remember those times, and a tremendous job has been done to bring the financial condition of this university to a healthy level. And I agree with Trustee Harper. This is a tremendous job being done. We'll go on to the next committee, Academic Affairs. Trustee Watt. Go ahead.
Dr. Williams,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Trustee. Mr. Gibson.
Yeah, Trustee Hackett, as part of this business and finance, there'll be a sub carve out based on the agenda for Trustee Hackett, buildings and grounds. With your pleasure and with your permission, we can start on the presentation.
Please go ahead, sir.
All right. And we acknowledge our trustees that are part of the buildings and grounds committee, Trustee Crumpleton, Trustee Harper, Trustee Ball, thank you. And I'm going to turn it over. You can go to the next slide. We've got 3 agenda items. I'll let Mr. Shipp kind of walk us through these items in brief succession.
Okay, good. Good morning, everyone. I will be very brief. So if I'm going too fast, just stop me with the question if you have any. Quickly, we'll go on and talk about department initiatives. And there, what we have is I'm pretty proud of that we were able to decrease through competitive bidding a couple of large responsibilities that we have on campus. One is our waste management services, which is all our trash services, and also our pest control services. And we'll be able to decrease those over the next 5 years with a 5-year contract. One thing that we wanted to do as far as as maintenance is concerned is we wanted to be more preventative instead of reactive. So we increased accountability for preventative maintenance. And what you see there is we have contracts for boilers, chiller cleaning, filter changing, things of that nature, all the different ancillary things that require preventative maintenance. We've been able to reach out and go out for bid and get different companies under contract.
Mr. Shipp, I want to let the board know too, whenever Mr. Shipp calls me, if I think a project is going to cost 150, he says it's going to be 250, right? But I give him credit on this occasion because, and you go back on the previous slide, make sure you guys, like he's saving us close to $1 million off of just these couple of contracts over a period of 5 years. So he does do an extraordinary job of bringing the cost in. And I just want to make sure I highlight that because I give him a lot of heat for, for other stuff across campus, but all day, every day, he 100% delivers and brings the cost down. He just doesn't talk about it because he just keeps moving. But I want to make sure I draw attention to that. Thank you. Keep going.
Real quick, highlights on buildings and ground is not, some of it is not as attractive as others, but it's very important that you take a look at our roof renovations. And here we have pictures of Morrison Fine Arts, so we can keep on moving past those. But the goal is to, if we can protect the outside of the building, we can definitely maintain the inside of the building. And a lot of what you see here is a new reflective roofing system. And the reason why we use white instead of a darker color is that we want to reduce the heat load, which also saves on our air conditioning units and cuts our utilities down a little bit. So everything goes into play when we're looking at that. You can move on to the next slide. Again, the Night Hall cafeteria renovation is one that I think came out tremendously well. I'll be glad once we're past this pandemic and we can all gather and really take a look of that facility together. I kind of missed, taking people on tours to really see a lot of the details that went into that we can't show you, and you can continue to move forward on those. And remember, we had a lot of student involvement in this as well. And part of the furniture and furnishings that you see in there was some of their recommendations and the way that it was laid out. I think we can move on to the next slide. We can keep going. Event center update. I always want to keep this one on everybody's forefront and give you a good progress summary, because this is a large multi-million-dollar project. Right now, we're past what you see here. Project is moving within budget and on time. Actually, it's a little bit ahead of time. Today is definitely a slowdown for us, but geo-piers are installed. And the biggest thing about geo-piers is that's actually is what is going to be supporting the actual building. So this is your actual footing, and all of that is done. The storm sewer, and I would like to just take a minute to say that we have been working with the city of Huntsville. So all of our, what we call our aid to construction, our gas, our water, our electricity, all of that, which is roughly maybe at a cost for this building, which is about $1.5 or so million, that has been waived, and the city of Huntsville has taken on that process and not charged the university. And so in working with them, they've really been good partners. So that's a cost avoidance that we did not have to worry about. All the under slab, rough end, that's piping and everything like that has been done. And if you move on to the next slide, which is next few slides are just photos. Of course, the site does not look like this anymore. It's well progressed past that level. And again, those are pits and everything. And pretty much where we are right now, we're getting ready to do structural steel. We're actually getting ready to start to see the building take shape. It is amazing how well it is moving. And other than that, that is the Buildings and Grounds presentation. I will have more hopefully in June to update you on even more as far as other projects that we have out there that will start to come on board.
To Trustee Hackett, and any other questions for pertaining to this area? If you're on mute right now, sir.
Mr. Gibson, I will say that Trustee Hackett and I and the other members of the committee met on this presentation last week, and we did not have any concern. If there's no additional questions, I think that would conclude our report.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Trustee Harper, Trustee Hackett. Now I apologize for not recognizing this important report. It's an exciting time with the things that are happening, to see the changes occurring, as Mr. Gibson spoke of, on campus. We will now move to academic affairs. Trustees Pickett and Watts, please.
Absolutely. We'll go ahead and
see the changes occurring, as Mr. Gibson spoke of, on campus. We will now move to academic affairs. Trustees Pickett and Watts, please.
Can you hear me? Absolutely. Hello. We'll go ahead and
see the changes occurring, as Mr. Gibson spoke of.
We got a loop. We got a loop.
Can you guys hear now?
It was looping. It was looping back.
Okay. So can everyone hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. We're going to go ahead and get started with academic affairs. Dr. Swoop, if you can pull up the PowerPoint, please.
Back.
Thank you. So can everyone hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. We're going to go ahead and get started.
So I think what's happening is when I share the sound, it's sharing the meeting sound. So the video that's embedded in academic affairs, I won't be able to share the sound since I'm streaming the YouTube live.
Okay. All right. Well, what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and turn over to Dr. Williams, and but the academic affairs committee members, co-trustee is Dr. Pickett. And next slide. Great. Trustee Gainey, Trustee Hackett, and Trustee Jeanette Jones. At this time, I ask Dr. Williams to come and present what he has for academic affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and certainly thanks to Trustee Banks Pickett, Gainey, Hackett, and Trustee Jeanette Jones for their indulgence. I also like to thank VP Gibson for yielding the balance of his time. We picked up 1 minute, and so I've distributed that 1 minute to our team members, and we will try to keep on time. I am suffering from a little PTSD due to the fact that Dr. Eugene and I were here during those 10, 11, and 12 years. So that presentation has me a little unsettled. But anyway, great presentation, Mr. Gibson, and we will move forward. Dr. Swoop, thank you for allowing our team members into the portal. We will start our action items. We have 3 action items to start off with, and those action items are memorandums of understanding, or MOUs. The first one was relative to research, grant, and contracting efforts and initiatives. The second one is an academic MOU with a partnering institution in our service region in North Alabama. And the third one is more of a service under our umbrella, the triaculate of instruction, research, and service, and technical assistance. Just a brief explanation. We have been partnering with South Alabama on several initiatives relative to research and contracting. And they recently donated $75,000 to us in carbon fiber for both research and our student experiential learning projects, specifically on our development of our race car to compete on a national competition. And so out of that evolved a better relationship. And so we would like to give the president the okay to execute this MOU that will focus on research and academic pursuits, which are essentially of mutual benefits. This has been reviewed by General Counsel, and so we're ready to move forward to execution. The second MOU is with the University of North Alabama, and this one is purely academic, and it focuses on nursing. As you know, we don't have a nursing college or nursing degree program, but University of North Alabama does. And they would like to recruit our students into an accelerated BSN program with the potential opportunity of also entering the MSN program. The benefit of this MOU is that our students will receive a 20%, essentially a 20% decrease in tuition, and they will designate up to 20% of available admission slots to our students if they so desire to enter into the nursing field and acquire BSN. Our third MOU is with an agency within the U.S. Department of Commerce. And that agency is called the National Telecommunications and Information Administration. The reason that we want to execute this MOU is that it is across the campus, both academic and in information technology. Our leads on this are Dr. Damian Clark, with support from our computer science department, and Dr. ZT Ding in engineering. And what this MOU and this effort will focus on is providing technical support for underserved communities to develop short and long-term broadband in underserved communities to accelerate capacity building and the socioeconomic growth, and to enhance their telecommunications applications and infrastructure. And part of the focus will be the Black Belt region in the state of Alabama. So, Mr. Chairman, we submit these 3 MOUs for board approval for Dr. Andrew Yugini to execute.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Williams. Do we do them together or do them each individually?
We can do all these together if
okay.
you so desire.
Well, you've heard the report from the provost, and the chair will entertain a motion at this time to allow the president to enter into MOUs with these different organizations.
Mr. Chair, I think the motion will be that the committee recommends to the board.
Okay.
For its approval.
So stated. The chair will entertain a motion at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we move forward with this to the full board for approval.
Okay.
And Chairman, this is Trustee Gainey. I second.
Okay. It's been properly moved in second. Is there any question? If not, vote by the sign of aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Okay, the motion carries. Go ahead, Dr. Williams.
We have 5 more action items. The first one is relative to our relationship with our neighboring HBCU, Drake State. We've been working with them on several initiatives, but one in particular, which is to enhance our partnership in the area of computer science. And so Dr. ZT Ding will briefly present that action item for approval. We also have a revision to our distance education policies and procedures. Given this new normal that we have, we're strengthening our policies and procedures in that area. And so Dr. Rhonda Moore Jackson will present that. And then Dr. and Dean Walton, Alina Walton, will present 3 action items that are academic related in our English, cultural studies, and our writing programs. So Dr. Dean, you present the first request.
Thank you, Dr. Williams, and good morning, everyone. We requesting to add the computer science program to the existing 2+2 agreement with Drake State. This will strengthening our academic partnership with Drake State. Thank you.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation. The chair will entertain a motion at this time.
Chairman, I recommend that we continue the program with Drake State.
Okay.
Trustee Hackett says second.
Okay, it's been properly moved in second. Ready for the question? All those in favor with sign of aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Dr. Jackson?
Yes, sir. Dr. Swoop, could you advance the slides to that part of the presentation? Thank you. Okay, one more. Thank you. Good morning to everyone today. So what we have before you are the proposed policy revisions to the current distance education policies. The first is for the inclusion of attendance verification. This is a requirement for financial aid to be processed for students. And so while we've been doing this in practice, we want to make sure that it is reflected in our policies. So you'll see where we identify what our learning management system is and that faculty must utilize that learning management system. And then right below there, we identify what constitutes attendance verification, which in this case is that the student must have some type of activity participation in the course. Simply logging in does not constitute attendance. And so that is the first new policy that is being added. This is not an existing policy. The next is for new distance education courses. This is a new policy. This policy just goes ahead and puts our content in place with what we've already been doing in practice, and that is to ensure that the process for certifying our courses is followed. This includes notifying chairs and deans when a course has been submitted for review by our office, and so this process is laid out in this particular new policy. The next new policy is with regard to distance education course faculty. All university faculty must have completed the AAMU Online Instructor Certification Program in order to teach online courses at the university. And this policy just lays out what those requirements are. It also states how often faculty will need to do those recertifications to maintain that certification. Those are all of the new policies. Provost, would you like for us to do?
Yes, proceed.
Overview.
Yeah, proceed.
Okay, so the next two are, I'm sorry, go ahead, thank you. There we go. Thank you. That's what I needed, Dr. Soup. So the next are our revision policies. And so we're going to look at the first, right below the existing policies where it says policy revision course certification. This one says that distance education courses are certified by our office, as we stated previously. This policy is being revised because we needed to put in language that states that this certification process must be completed prior to the course being listed in the university's registration system. So that's the addition, that second bullet. And then the certification procedures are the same. That does not require a change. The next revision is with regard to quality assurance, which is really important. Once a course is certified, our office makes sure in conjunction with the academic departments that the course content and quality is maintained. Quality assurance in particular is most important with regard to the academic chairs having access to the course content to ensure that faculty are present, that students are properly participating with regard to quality assurance. And so that's what you're going to see at that second bullet where it says academic chairs must be enrolled into distance education courses by faculty within their department. These academic chairs will be trained as well. That's on that third bullet. They will be required to participate in the Academic Administrators Quality Assurance Workshop, which is facilitated by our office and will address understanding our Blackboard LMS, our online course standards, as well as protecting academic freedom and evaluation. I believe is that the last one?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is again new policies and a revision of a couple of policies. As you can see, we are endeavoring to just strengthen our policies and make sure as we prepare for our 2023 submission to SAC-COC that we are definitely compliant and that we've addressed any issues in this new normal, which we are adding a couple of accountability measures here, as you can see as well. So the motion should essentially be to approve the passing of the new policy and policy revisions in distance education.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Williams. You've heard the recommendation from Academic Affairs concerning the revision and new policies for consideration. The chair will entertain a motion at this time.
I move for the approval of the new policies and revisions to the distance education policies.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second. You ready for the question? All those in favor, by the sign of aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Dr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, Dean Lena Walton will present a request of 3 new tracks. Academic tracks, that is. Dr. Walton?
I'm still muted. I was still muted. Good morning to everyone. Trustees, thank you for allowing me to present requests to add 3 tracks to the Bachelor of Arts program in English. The first one is literature and writing. The second is literary and cultural studies. And the third is professional creative writing. I'm going to do all 3 together because they are all in the same program. The program chair, faculty, and current students, as well as alumni who were surveyed, feel that providing these tracks will improve the marketability of graduates and also increase the number of students in the major. So with that, I am requesting that the 3 tracks be added to the Bachelor of Arts program in English.
Okay, thank you. You've heard the request from Academic Affairs. The chair will entertain a motion at this time to add those new tracks.
Mr. Chairman, this is Trustee Hackett. I move that we approve the 3 requests pertaining to the Bachelor of Arts in English and go forward.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I second.
Okay. So it's been moved and properly second. You ready for the question? All those in favor, by the sign of aye.
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 All those that oppose, same sign. Motion carries. Dr. Williams.
Thank you, trustees.
Thank you, trustees. Dr. Watts, we will move forward with our updates. Our first update will be our longest and most extensive, but we have 3 presenters. Dr. Arrington, Pamela Arrington, our Associate Vice President, will lead in the presentation, and Dr. Pamela Thompson and Ms. Monica Clark will present specific information from their areas. So Dr. Arrington. Is she there?
Yes, sir.
Sorry. Good morning, everyone. Dr. Swoop, the next slide, please. The Freshman Academy advisors serve approximately 1,600 new first-year students each year. This also includes undecided majors and students on academic probation across all classifications, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. Next slide. Next slide. The purpose of the Freshman Academy is to assist first-year students with their initial transition to the university. It is the point of entry for all first-time freshman students. The academic advisors provide tutoring and orientation, academic support services. They advise freshman students until they earn 31 credit hours. They also advise students, as I mentioned before, who are on academic warning, probation, and suspension across all classifications. The organizational unit comprises 6 programs that you see here. The Early Alert System grades first. It has been enhanced, the platform, and so in 2 weeks, we will be launching a more advanced early alert system, which is called Navigate. The academic recovery program, the first year experience course, tutorial assistance network, service learning, and academic advising. The early alert system enables faculty and staff and advisors to quickly identify students who need some early intervention. And this is based on faculty entering midterm progress reports into the system, as well as attendance reports. And so there are certain warning signs, and with those warning signs, then academic advisors are able to contact the students and bring them in for, make sure that they are aware of the academic and support systems and do intrusive counseling, advising. The academic recovery program is for all students, all classifications, freshmen, sophomores, juniors, who are experiencing academic difficulty, and also our undeclared students who have not declared a major. The program also includes an academic success course where students are made aware of tutoring academic workshops. A third program in this Freshman Academy unit is the first year experience course. This is a year-long program and it has 2 courses. The orientation course 101, which assists students in making satisfactory adjustment to college. First year students enroll in this course in the fall. That following semester, the spring semester, they enroll in Orientation 102. This course is designed to help first year students progress to the next level of their college experience. And the content topics include service learning, leadership, and citizenship. So those are the 6 programs that make up the Freshman Academy unit. I briefly described 3 of them, and now Dr. Thompson will present more on the academic advising program. She in particular will talk about how she and the academic advisors transitioned to this academic advising program to an online program last March, due to COVID-19 and adhering to all of those protocols. And she will also discuss the number of academic advisors and their caseload. She will be followed by Ms. Clark, who will discuss the service learning program. And then Ms. Clark will be followed by Mrs. McClellan, who will present on the Tutorial Assistance Network program. So at this time, Dr. Thompson.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Arrington. And good morning, everyone.
Morning.
What you see here on this slide is just a listing of who our current advisory team members consist of. We have 2 for our academic recovery program and now 2 for each of the academic colleges. Next slide. But we also wanted to give you an overview of what the past couple of years look like, what has transpired since 2019. Prior to 2019, there was 1 advisor per college and 1 recovery advisor. But in 2019, we acquired an advisor, and at that time, the highest caseload was for the College of Business. So he was paired with our advisor for the College of Business. That shows now for 2019, there was a range from 269 to 633 in the advisor caseload. It was still a continuous need. Next slide. So 2020, we increased to 8 advisors. One was acquired through our Title III grant, Enhancing Student Success and Engagement. And we also were able to acquire an additional advisor through state funding. And so at this point, we had 2 advisors for the College of Business, 2 for education, but that still left our STEM colleges with 1 advisor. And those caseloads at that time in 2020 ranged from 252 to 427. Next slide. So spring 2021, brought welcome relief. In 2021, with the STEM grant that Dr. Swoop oversees, it allowed for 2 STEM advisors. So her 2 STEM advisors joined our Freshman Academy advisors. We now have 2 advisors per college, in addition to the 2 recovery advisors, and the current caseload sizes range from 202 to 283. Next slide. Because of the pandemic and the university closure back in March 2020, we had to regroup quick, fast, and in a hurry. And my team did an awesome job of making that transition. Our lead advisor and the lead recovery advisor, as well as all the other advisory team, got together and collected all the forms that we utilize in advising. The protocol was established for what our virtual services would look like, as well as making all of those forms fillable. We were able to transition within a day's notice, and none of the appointments that the students had scheduled were impeded. Next slide. Students were sent out instructions as to what our e-advising process would contain. They were also sent the information and the fillable forms so that they would know what to do. The advisors converted to a virtual advising process, in addition to their regular responsibility to generate the initial schedules for all the incoming students. So in addition to the regular appointments, they generated over 1,600 schedules last summer. Next slide. What you see here is an example of what the students will see when they log into our Grade First, which is our student success platform we currently use. And the students are prompted, you see the button they would click to schedule appointment. They also get a look at what they're currently scheduled for. Next slide. Next, it shows them when they click that button to schedule an appointment, they get to see what the availability for their advisor is. Each advisor goes in and they select their available times, and the student have options as to what time, what date and time they can select. Next slide. Once they schedule that appointment, they receive a message confirming they have an appointment. They will be sent a link. They are also at the bottom, you'll see the attached forms and resources. We have an academic planning worksheet that the student fill out and send to the advisor, and they advise them based on the information provided on that form, as well as their course bulletin. They are also given instructions as to how to register their classes in Banner, because their initial schedule we pre-generate for them. So they come into the fall semester with a schedule already generated, but in the spring semester, they then register themselves for their fall classes. Next slide.
I might add, Dr. Thompson, if you saw the picture on that slide, that is one of the reasons you approved the previous policy, because that happens with students attending classes, et cetera. And of course, driving and engaging in that activity is illegal in most states. But we're having faculty to ask students to log off if indeed they're engaging in other activities while they're supposed to be in class. So that's an excellent illustration.
Next slide. Okay, the academic recovery program, you heard Dr. Arrington mention before that our recovery advisors work with students who are on academic warning, probation, as well as return after suspension. And they provide services to them to help them work towards going back into academic
meetings. What's going on?
We'll come when you get to the.
Okay, all right. Bye-bye.
Next slide. The academic recovery process, they also outlined for their students what the e-advising process was. And it was similar to regular advising, but they also, in addition, utilized Blackboard and had some modules those students had to complete. Next slide. Wanted to share with you some of the highlights from the success course. We piloted a couple of classes, academic recovery courses in where we worked with students who were on academic warning and probation. The classes are small in nature to have an idea to see if these additional services will have an impact. And those students who passed, we had a 79% pass rate. And those students who passed also returned to good academic standing. Next slide. Just give you another illustration of what those numbers looked like as far as how many enrolled, how many dropped, but the ones who successfully completed the course, we had a increase in not only the pass rate, but again, as I mentioned before, their ability to return to academic good standing. Next slide. So I mentioned to you, and you also heard Dr. Arrington mention our Grace First Early Alert System. It's the student success platform we currently use. Students are able to schedule appointment with advising. They're able to schedule appointments in tutoring. They're also are able to view their current schedule. And we utilize the early alert part to send notifications to faculty to for them to fill out progress reports. And from those progress reports, we're able to identify if those students are in jeopardy of failure. We send out 2 campaigns to the faculty, one after the first 3 weeks of classes, and then another one at midterm. When the student is noted that they are in jeopardy of failure, an alert goes to the student as well as the advisor. Next slide. This slide just shows you the response rate that we've had over the last couple of years. It ranged anywhere from 45 to 57% from the faculty. Next slide. Now you will hear from Ms. Monica Clark, our coordinator for service learning.
Good morning. Dr. Sloop, can you move the slide, please? Thank you. First, I want to highlight some of the service learning activities that happened 2019, 2020. One of our main focuses would be the Orientation 102 classes. As you can see, we registered and had over 1,300 students in Orientation 102, and we serve 13,210 hours of service in our community. Next slide, Dr. Swoop. Thank you. We had the opportunity to do several events last year. Of course, we transitioned once COVID hit, but before COVID, we took students to Selma. As you can see, we did a lot of voter registration activities. We had quite a few walks, breast cancer walk. We had assignments or activities with Big Brother, Big Sister. We had a civic week the week prior to COVID, right before school got out in February. We were able to do our civic week. So we had quite a few activities. Again, we served 4,897 students during activities and events for service learning, volunteerism, and civic engagement. Dr. Swoop, next slide, please. One of the greatest impacts that I feel we had with all the work that we've done, we had the challenge and the, I guess, the great, we were able to work with people statewide and nationwide. Last year was our first year. We worked nationally with our very first HBCU voting summit. This summit, Alabama A&M hosted the event. We were also able to do the very first HBCU President's Call, in which Dr. Hougini graciously hosted that as well. We had a state event as well. We had the National Alabama Voting Summit. Even though we worked with the University of Alabama, Alabama A&M was very prominent in putting that on as well. We also had students to write the very first letter up to our legislator regarding the student rights, especially when it came to COVID, and how Alabama students were not represented when it came to making sure they had their rights, their voting rights installed. Next slide, Dr. Swoop, please. And finally, we had quite a bit national accolades and awards last year. We were recognized twice in Forbes magazine. They did 2 articles on our students and our efforts here on campus. MTV also followed one of our students, one of our poll defenders, and then SLSV did a supernova spotlight on myself in the university. We also had several live Instagram and Facebook events. Next slide. And finally, Alabama A&M received the Removing Barriers and Increasing Student Access to the Polls Award. This award was a national award given to us by Student Learn, Student Vote. This national nonpartisan organization focused on student involvement and civic engagement. It is out of Washington, D.C., and we were very pleased to receive that award. Unfortunately, I received the award sitting at my dining room table and not in D.C., so I was a little sad about that, but it was still a great, wonderful, exciting opportunity for A&M. So that concludes my update on service learning, and next you will hear from Linda Skeet in tutoring.
Yes, good morning, everyone. The Tutorial Assistance Network, we provide individual and group and small group tutoring. We also provide supplemental instruction services and structured learning assistance. Next slide. Our students schedule their appointments through Grades First, as Dr. Thompson mentioned, soon to be Navigate. Next slide. And they attend their sessions via Zoom. Next slide. Our students also evaluate their TAN experience through an online evaluation so that we can tell if they are really benefiting, if they're getting a better understanding of the material after they're finishing their sessions. Next slide. As we continue our transition to the virtual environment, we are utilizing various methods in order to get that information out to the students and also to engage them in the process so that we can hear from them and find out what are their needs. So we're using social media, we're using the campus email, we're using those Grades First campaigns and word of mouth, connecting with the advisors, the faculty, making sure that we are on the syllabi presented, as well as having virtual final exam study sessions. Next slide. And what you see here are some of our promotional materials that we place on social media and that we also send out via email. Next slide. During the 2019-2020 academic year, we served about 753 students between the three services. Next slide. And this first element is a breakdown of the Supplemental Learning Assistance Program, where we had an overall pass rate of 68%. So these students ordinarily would have taken a transitional course and then taken a regular course in order to get credit for towards graduation. But with the SLA course, which the three courses are English 101E, History 101E, and Math 112E, they're able to take a course, have that help built into the course. It can come towards their degree, and they're able to move on. For English, it would be Progression English 102. They would be able to go ahead and finish up faster without having to take the transitional course and then that course. So the English 101 had a pass rate of 67%, History 101E 66%, and Math 112E 71%. Next slide. You'll also find that the supplemental instruction pass rate was about 73.58%. And with the SI, this was mainly, we offered it in Math 112. Math 112 is one of the courses that the majority of our students need to take. And so we consistently try to have SI in that course. Next slide. We also provide tutoring. That is the first thing we started with here, A&M Tutorial Services, before we expanded, and we had a 75% pass rate with tutoring. You'll also notice that our top requested courses were Biology 101, as well as 103, Chemistry 101, 251, which is Organic Chem. So you have General Chem and Organic Chem, our English Composition course, History, our Math, some one developmental, and then the rest are general math courses, Math 112, Algebra, our Trig, our Algebra Trig Combination, our Calculus 1 and 2. Next slide. As we transition in the spring semester with COVID-19, there were a number of challenges. We found that there were students who were not attending classes. They were caught up where they were at home. And so they were distracted by employment, they were distracted by family responsibilities. And so with the challenges experienced, we tried to take a more intrusive approach to trying to identify what those challenges were and provide support. Also, we found that a number of our students did not have stable internet connections, and so that impacted them being able to take advantage of the services. And I'm happy to say that our IT area has continued to ensure that those things are not as challenging anymore. Next slide. So TAN is constantly moving. We must change to meet the needs of our changing communities. And so we're developing videos and cheat sheets so that students who cannot participate in real-time tutorial assistance, that they will be able to gain access to these short videos and cheat sheets to help them enhance their knowledge of the subject material. We're also in the process of developing artificial intelligence so that our students are able to have that assistance and virtual access to all 10 in components, including our professional development for our tutors, supplemental instruction leaders, and structured learning assistance leaders. And we're also updating our promotional videos because the same way we eat with our eyes, our students also are engaged with their eyes as well as their hearing. And so we are updating our promotional videos so that we can engage our student community as well as our faculty and staff community. Next slide. Here are a few photos, and this is when TAN services were still face-to-face. Here you'll see that in the TAN Center where students were receiving tutorial assistance in individual and small group sessions. Next slide. And here are a few photos from our Level Up. This is one of the face-to-face Level Up sessions. And this Level Up hosted by the Freshman Academy and our face-to-face. We also collaborated with Student Affairs. We also have the faculty participating with the tutors to help the students prepare for their finals. And we have continued this event and moved it to a virtual Zoom platform so that students can still have that preparation where they can come in and they can meet with faculty as well as their peer tutors to obtain that assistance before finals. And that concludes the 10 portion of the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Skeet. Mr. Chairman, as you know, there's always a reason why we present these items. And I know that was unit specific and got down to some technocratic details of operations, but there were some questions about our efforts in academic affairs relative to student support with students with challenges. And then number two, Dr. Ugini set a task force this summer that focused on this area and potential revisions and organizational changes. And so that task force has completed its work. Some of the people involved were on the writing team, Dr. Arrington, Dr. Swoop, Dr. Bonnie Banks, Dr. Thompson, Dr. Rhonda Moore Jackson, Dr. Walk, and others. I don't want to try to name everybody because it was a pretty large task force, and I'm doing it off the top of my head, so charge it to my head and not my heart. But the bottom line is we've completed that work and presented it to Dr. Ugini. This was information to show you a baseline of where we are now, but there may be some potential future requests coming to radically revise this organizational structure, which to change your organizational structure requires an approval by the Board of Trustees.
Before you go forward, let me ask you, and I'm not asking for an answer to this today, but I think it's something that we need to investigate and have the information available, particularly as we're looking forward to 2024, that is the SACS COC reaffirmation. She presented information about the SLA, and in the SLA, obviously what we're doing is having students to take the supplemental coursework along with the actual course. I think it would be helpful if we could look at an analysis of a couple of things. One is for those students who take, for example, English 101 SLA versus those students who take English 101 not having, is there a difference in the pass rate? And then the other would be for those students who do the prep course. I'll use that, I don't want to call it what it is, but you know, the first course, and then they go to 101. Is there a difference in the performance of those students who have gone through this initial course and then do 101 versus those students who took the other course to begin with? I think it's important to have the answer to that because it will, again, inform a decision the university needs to make as it relates to where we place students when they come to the university. I don't expect an answer for that today, but I think it's something that we need to investigate.
Yeah, we certainly have the data, and that'll be a part of the discussions in looking at the results of what the task force presented.
Okay. Very good, very good.
Okay.
And
Dr. Williams?
Go right ahead, trustee.
Also, is it a way to see how those students, the difference in the, I guess, pass rate of those that do participate in the 101E, I think that's what it was called, SLA or E, and how they do in 102, you know, if compared to the students who just do the 101, the regular 101 course. I would like to see that data as well.
Okay, Dr. Arrington, Dr. Thompson, please make note of that.
Dr. Williams, if I may, before you move ahead, since we're on the discussion about the support thing, is your support team working closely with the support team from Dr. Crosby's area to identify those students' special challenges? Because you know we know that the learning challenges that many of us have may be related to things that are not necessarily academically. So are your people trained and working to identify those and work on those family of origin issues and those other things that may be impeding their ability to progress?
The short answer, Mr. Chairman, is yes. In Student Affairs, we have an Office of Disability Service that works very closely with our chairs and deans with students who have challenges, not just disability challenges, but other challenges relative to illness and or mental, psychological, and or other challenges that may impede their ability to excel academically. They work directly with her office, and there's a symbiotic relationship. So the short answer is yes. I want to get into the specifics of that. I prefer Ms. Williams, Ms. Sonoya Williams, who directs that office. Maybe she can update you on where we are in terms of activity in her office. But yes, there's a formal organizational dotted line process for that to happen. Yes, sir. We've got a little less than 15 minutes, so we're going to look at 5 minutes piece for the remainder of our updates. First update will be from Dr. Walton in the College of Education. She's got 3 initiatives that we've had some questions about that we're going to update the board on. And following that, we'll look at our student profile. We're going to give a couple of minutes to Dr. Walk. I had said I would do that presentation, but since he's on with a suit and a tie, I think we're going to ask him. I'm just ask him to take 2 or 3 minutes, and then I'll give the final updates on where we are with our academic programs and new initiatives. Dr. Walton?
Yes, sir. I am going to ask Dr. Davenport to speak on EdTPA and Dr. Kim Roper to speak on the right place, and then I will speak on the MAIL initiative.
Thank you, Dr. Walton, and good morning to everyone. The EdTPA assessment is an assessment that's a pedagogical content knowledge assessment that is administered by the Alabama State Department of Education. Next slide, please. The EdTPA assessment is consequential in the state of Alabama. In order for candidates to earn a professional teaching certificate, they must pass this assessment. It's developed by professionals for professionals, and EdTPA is the first national available teacher design support assessment system in order for initial teachers to receive certification. It was created exclusively and is owned by Sanford University, and the EdTPA includes up to 28 versions. And in these versions, the candidates focus on planning, instruction, and assessment. Next slide, please. EdTPA is administered during the internship. Our candidates complete 16 weeks of an internship that consists of 660 hours. And when they're in the first 8 weeks of this internship, they have an opportunity to complete this assessment. They complete the assessment in the classroom with candidates, with other candidates, and also complete it with other students in the classroom. All teaching fields must earn a score of 37, which is 15 rubrics on this assessment, and elementary education candidates must score 44 with 18 rubrics. That includes mathematics. Next slide, please. If you take a look at this table, you would notice that our percentage for pass rate is 100%, meaning that all candidates graduating in education have passed the EdTPA assessment and earned certification in Alabama. If you look in the right column, to the far right, you notice the pass rate percentage rate, and that is the percentage rate for the very first attempt. And you'll notice in the fall of 2018 was the first time when it was consequential and the first time it was administered. And you will notice that there's a score of 54% for first attempt. And then as you move up, you'll see that we've moved to 90%. I like to say that for the years where you do not see 100% for the pass rate for the first attempt, most of those were technical issues where the company sent back a candidate's portfolio because something may have been wrong with the video and we had to resubmit. And so we had to resubmit those. Next slide, please. Of those 65 candidates that have taken and passed the EdTPA, I'd like for you to focus in on the overall mean score. You'll notice on the column with 15 rubrics with the Alabama State Department of Education, there's 37 points required to pass, and our candidates are averaging 43 points. If you see the 18 rubric assessment for elementary, you will notice that the cut score for the state of Alabama is 44, but our candidate's mean score is 51.31. Next slide, please. The Council for Accreditation for Educator Preparation, we call it CAPE, that is the accrediting body for the colleges and divisions and departments of education at all institutions. And you will notice that our GPAs for our candidates in the education program have general studies GPAs that average from 3.16 all the way to 3.62, and that is undergrad and alternative candidates. Undergrad candidates must carry a GPA of 2.75 to maintain and stay in the education program, and alternative candidates must complete and maintain a 3.25 GPA. You'll notice professional study courses that are listed. Those are the foundation courses for education majors, and the overall mean is a 3.78 GPA. The teaching field is the specific content courses directly to their area of expertise, and the mean score is a 3.67. And the overall for cohort groups, which puts us exceeding the GPA of 3.0 for cohort groups with the accrediting body, is a 3.62. Next slide, please. And now I'm going to turn it over to the Writing Center.
Good morning. I want to let you know that the Right Place is here to serve students and develop their writing skills. Our objectives are to help writers understand the basic writing concepts and the writing process, to help them demonstrate confidence in their writing abilities, and to help them to apply writing concepts effectively in multiple contexts. Next slide. We officially reopened the Writing Center, which we dubbed the Right Place, in February 2019. We moved over to the Carver Complex building, and we have provided services to over 3,000 students as of this semester. We provide ongoing tutor training, weekly and/or monthly writing workshops, individual class visits to discuss content-specific writing assignments. We provide writing resources via our website, and we have on our website other opportunities for students as well to help them practice their writing. And we also have begun to try to build a presence on social media to engage students there through our Facebook and Instagram pages. Next slide. So this chart shows the number of students that we have served since the spring of 2019. Our center, being in the central location that it is now, has been a very inviting space where students would come in and work independently and use our computers. But we also would do in-person workshops as well, and of course the one-on-one tutoring. And you can see the numbers there. We also surveyed our students because we were interested in their feelings of confidence and their attitudes toward writing. And the 2019-2020 survey found that most students reported that their attitude about writing improved after coming to the Right Place. 97% reported that they were more confident than before, that they could complete their writing tasks. Of course, our in-person advantage was compromised when we had to go completely online due to COVID-19. However, we had already established the ability to work with students via Zoom. We had thankfully already put those measures in place. And so we were able to transition very easily to offer online tutoring. We already had also what we call the e-consultation option, where students are able to email us their assignments and we email them back feedback. So we didn't have any difficulty there. Of course, the numbers of students dropped a bit just because there was some orientation that took place and students we weren't a physical place that they could go. But we noticed that there was a great number of students that did attend our online workshops, whereas far fewer attended those workshops in person, which is an interesting thing to note. Yeah, next slide. So we have collaborated in various ways across campus with entities across campus. First of all, on our website, we have a page specifically for the English 10 students and English 10 faculty to provide resources to those students in those classes. We have also collaborated with Career Services in particular to present resume writing workshops and to assist students with their resume writing. We also, as of February 2020, have collaborated with the graduate school. We have a new way that graduate students' final documents are processed. And instead of just having an end of at the end of their time, at the end of the point where they're writing their dissertation or master's report, so on, just having a review service that sort of proofreads, we found that it was important that even graduate students develop their writing skills. So we train some English department faculty to tutor those students who are working on those capstone projects throughout the process of their writing of those documents rather than just at the end. And so the faculty tutors also present workshops for those graduate students who are completing those documents, because there's some specific requirements, of course, for those. And yes, that is, I think, all that I have.
Ma'am, thank you, Dr.
Thank you,
Roper.
Dr. Roper. I would like to introduce to the board the Males for Alabama Education. This project is funded by the state, and this is a pilot initiative undertaken by the state to improve the cadre of minority teachers in P-12 classrooms. Alabama A&M is one of 3 universities that is benefiting from this project. And I would also like to let the board know that Alabama A&M was the university that submitted a proposal to the state legislature to conduct this pilot initiative in the state. And that was actually initiated by the President Hugh Guinea, putting the bug in my ear to say we need something like this. So we are currently working alongside West Alabama and Athens State on this project. Next slide, please. The purpose of this project is to recruit, train, mentor, retain, and induct male undergraduate and graduate students so that they remain interested in teaching in P-12 schools. And we've listed the eligibility there. They have to have the GPA for each of the graduate and undergraduate programs. They have to be admitted into the program. There are two stages of this program. For the major part, we provide scholarships to those students, those male students, African-American or minority male students who are already admitted into the program. So we recruit them, we support them, and they get admitted into the program. Once they're fully admitted, they have a full scholarship from the program. Each male is eligible to get, I think, $10,000 annually. We also have assistance for those students who have not been admitted to the program. We assist them with passing the necessary exams or bringing their GPA up to the level where they can become admitted. And we assist the scholars themselves. We assist them with tuition, fees, books, and other necessary materials. Next slide, please. The male scholar we started off our first cohort in 2020. We currently have served 14 scholars, or serving 14 scholars. We had 2 students to graduate in spring 2020. We are anticipating graduation for 2 other students this semester. And our scholars are from many different programs: elementary education, secondary, physical education. Next slide, please. we, as part of the mentoring program, we have speakers to come in and once per month to meet with the scholars and other male students who would like to participate. And so you see the lineup of speakers that we've had. The last speaker was Dr. Hugh Guinea. We're looking forward to having Dr. Wims as our next speaker for our speaker series. And our speakers range from recent graduates to teachers who have been in the classroom for years, teachers who have retired from the classroom. And also for one of these, we had a professional football player who became a teacher to be a speaker. So we're trying to diversify the speakers so that our male candidates get a good understanding of what it is to be a male teacher in the classroom. Next slide, please. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you, ladies, for assisting.
And thank you, Dr. Walton. And Mr. Chairman, one of the reasons that we present the data on our education outcomes is because we've had a couple questions relative to our outcomes on our licensure exams, and the fact that our program now, we are somewhat of a model to peer institutions, and Dr. Walton is quickly becoming a superstar in this region. Her and Dr. Davenport and our other chairs and staff members. Dr. Rope is relatively new on the campus, but the Writing Center is quickly becoming very popular, and it is a very nice facility. So I'd like to thank Mr. Gibson and the CIO and others, Dr. Clark, for helping us with that. It's a very nice place for our students to go and enhance their skills. We are out of time, sir. Couple of other things we wanted to present. If you give me the opportunity to run through them real quick, if Dr. Walk, please allow me to just kind of.
Dr. Williams.
Yes.
May I request, if we could, to go ahead and go through these other items? It would put us a little off schedule, but I think it's important that we complete them if possible, please, sir.
Yes, I would agree. We'll have an abbreviated lunch since Dr. Jones will be serving us. So we can cut that time short if that's okay with everybody. And let's cover the material that we have before us, Dr. Williams.
Yeah, I'll be very brief, sir. I promise you. But there are a couple of things that are very important. Number one, this is a profile that we present to you every February relative to our fall enrollment data and profile. Next slide, please. Next slide. If you can see here, we had a slight.
Dr. Williams.
Yes, sir.
I thought you said you were going to let Dr. Walk present. That's why I asked, so he would have a chance to present.
Yeah, okay, good. I'll thank you, sir, for reprimanding me, and I will stand down. And Dr. Walk is an Ivy League graduate, so he's very brilliant and erudite, and he'll take a long time. See, I'll get right to the point. But Dr. Walk, please proceed, sir.
Trustees, President Hugini, Provost Wims, I'll have you know that I am the proud graduate of public institutions. Thank you very much, but I shall endeavor to be brief. A brief bit of context. So for fall 2020 enrollments, nationally, attendance was down 2.5%. This decrease in enrollment was largely due to a 10% drop in the two-year sector. Public four-year institutions, by contrast, saw a 0.2% increase. If we could go to the next slide, please. So you'll see that AAMU and its HBCU peers fall right around this range. We had a range of enrollment change from -8% to +7%. The one anomalous institution is South Carolina State University, who realized a 19% increase, but that was after years of enrollment decline, so they had a rebound year. But AAMU, with its slight decrease in enrollment, 1.6%, is right in line with our HBCU peers for fall 20. May we go to 2 slides ahead, please? So we have regional peers comprised of Alabama institutions and regional peers. For Alabama, in fall 2020, the 4-year sector saw an increase of 1.7%. Our regional peers saw their enrollments change over a range of -3% to +4%. Delta State University represented an anomaly with a 20% enrollment decrease. Haven't had an opportunity to dig down into that decrease, but again, we are well within the mid-range of our peers. May we advance a couple slides, please? One more. So nationally, graduate enrollment was up 3% in fall 2020. AAMU was down 1.6%. Can we go 1 slide ahead, please? But we've added spring enrollments to this slide to show that we are rebounding. So typically, spring enrollments are lower than fall enrollments. It's just a natural phenomenon across all levels. However, you will see that the spring 21 enrollment represented a 2.7% increase over spring 20 enrollment. So we are encouraged about that trend and look forward to it carrying forward to the fall. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Dr. Walk. I just want to add, we have 1 slide where we had our graduate completions, and this is a real challenge for us in terms of enrollment management of graduate students. Particularly if you look at the last year, 1920, we had 311 graduates. Well, out of 884 students, that's a 35% completion rate. Our graduate students are enrolling and completing sometimes ahead of time. We wish they'd slow down a little bit, but because once they complete, we have to replace them. And so some years we've had almost as many graduate students to complete as some commencements as undergraduate students. But bottom line is our graduate programs are very healthy and functioning very effectively and efficiently. Next slide, please. Next slide. Just as an update, you approved for us to move forward with a Master's of Public Administration a few board meetings ago. That program has now been approved by the Alabama Commission on Higher Education, and we are preparing our prospectus to send to SAC-COC. That should be sent shortly. We are looking to try to launch this program next academic year. So congratulations to the College of Business and Public Affairs. This is the public affairs arm of that college, and we look forward to this program being a very successful, high enrolled program. Next slide, please. The Alabama Commission also approved 2 concentrations, one in computer science and one in family financial planning that you approved, I believe, 2 or 3 board meetings ago. So this is for the board documentation. Next slide. This is the letter of documentation from the Alabama Commission on Higher Education. Next slide. This is very important. You approved for us to move forward with the request for a master's degree in electrical engineering and another master's degree in mechanical engineering. Those were subsequently approved by the Alabama Commission on Higher Education. After that, we developed a full prospectus of the program and submitted it to SAC-COC. Now, recently, SAC-COC has approved both programs for us to launch in the fall of 2020. We have that documentation included in your report. But this is very important. This puts us in another category. Along with our approval for ACSB accreditation of our business school, now we are with these graduate programs, which are traditional electrical and mechanical programs. Howard University, Jackson State has an electrical engineering program. Morgan State has a master's in electrical engineering. Norfolk State has a master's of electrical engineering. North Carolina A&T has a master in electrical and mechanical, Prairie View in electrical, Tuskegee in electrical and mechanical, and UDC in electrical and mechanical. So we are one of 3 or 4 with graduate programs now, to include our graduate programs in systems and material engineering and computer science. But to have in traditional electrical and mechanical, that puts us at another level in comparison to our peers. So kudos to Dr. Z.T. Ding and the chairs of those 2 programs, along with the faculty and staff who helped us to prepare all those documents. That's very important for us to note. In the June meeting, we will update you on ABET. We've got a notice of very clean bill of health from the accrediting body for engineering and technology. That's very important, and we'll share that at the June meeting. But thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And that concludes our report, and you can move to the Faculty Senate unless you want to skip the Faculty Senate. I mean, that's okay with us.
Dr. Williams, we will not be skipping the Faculty Senate. The illustrious Dr. Jones will now have her say.
Hearing none.
Thank you, Trustee Watts. You know, I always get that from Dr. Wim, so I'm immune to him, you know. I just want to thank you for this opportunity to present this report on behalf of the faculty of Alabama A&M. I'm going to give a very brief report since we're under tornado watch. We have continued to meet with President Hugani and Provost Wim to address the faculty concerns, so I don't need to elaborate on those. But we would like to thank Dr. President Hugani and his cabinet for arranging to have the Health and Wellness Center serve as a site for the delivery of the COVID-19 vaccine to faculty and staff and others in the greater Huntsville community. It's good. It was so good to see so many people in the community coming to Alabama A&M to get the vaccine who otherwise would not. And that's because they heard that we had it and they trust Alabama A&M. So thank you, Dr. Hugani, for caring. In terms of online instruction, we also want to express our appreciation to Provost Wims and the distance education staff for navigating us through the various modes of instruction through this pandemic and providing training workshops to enhance the online instruction. Thank you so much. Many of us, that was a big transition for us, especially me. In terms of salary adjustment implementation, we were so pleased, and I certainly was, to hear the wonderful financial outlook for our university. I want to thank all Dr. Hugani for his leadership and Mr. Gibson for getting all our finances in place. And we just want to thank the board and the president for the approval and implementation of the first phase of the salary adjustments that we received 3 years ago. That was really something that we all appreciated. 1/3 of the approved adjustments was implemented. So we want the board and administration to not lose sight of the commitment made and to implement the other phase this fall. The faculty activity, as you've seen in many of the presentations, and classroom instruction has increased dramatically. We're during this pandemic, and it has increased, it hasn't decreased. And a lot of people think that because we are online that your workload is decreased, but in actuality, we are working almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 24/7. So we get calls, as Mr. Gibson has mentioned, streaming is going on all the time. I get emails and I get calls on Sundays, my rest day. So we would like for the board to not lose sight of the president and the board. And we know Dr. Hugani is always doing what he can. So especially since we heard today about a $19.2 million increase. That's so phenomenal for any institution. In terms of other activities, Dr. Williams likes to hear about what's going on with the mentoring program that we started some years ago under Dr. Hugini's leadership. We've conducted via Zoom comprehensive promotion and tenure workshops for faculty, especially junior faculty. When we go out and recruit faculty and try to get the best, then we want to keep them. So we want to make sure they navigate the promotion and tenure process. So we presented workshops to enable them to do so. I've also presented workshops at Oakwood University and the University of Alabama in Birmingham. So far, junior faculty in the mentoring program have developed very strong promotion and tenure application packages, and we're very proud of them, and several have been promoted to the next level. And finally, the Alabama Advanced Partnership Project that's funded by the National Science Foundation has been absolutely successful. We've focused on achieving gender equity in STEM. We've had workshops on work-life balance, unconscious bias, and we all have that, intersectionality, pay equity, search committee training, and the promotion and tenure process. Now, these workshops are open to faculty and university administrators, and they are also designed to help us look at our institutional policies, our procedures, and our practices for recruitment and promotion, and to increase the visibility and presence of and inclusion of women, racial and ethnic minorities at all academic ranks. So, and finally, in conclusion, we've received information from faculty, and some department chairs have expressed concern regarding the efficacy and effectiveness of a couple of departments that are very large. We have some very large departments with several numerous degree programs, large enrollments, and general education offerings. And so for these departments, faculty have expressed some interest in looking at them again. We want to revisit them to see how we might reconsider some of the alignments that we have in the department structure. So these are some of the things I wanted to present them in about a minute and a half that come before the Faculty Senate. And thank you for listening.
All right.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to add that we had started to look at those department and alignments and the numbers, but given the pandemic and our shifting, we're going to have to get back to that this summer and next fall. Dr. Jones, that was a very interesting statement. The shakedown she learned from Dr. Andrew Hugini. And so, but we definitely support, we're making a lot of investments in infrastructure, facilities, major renovations and repair, capital projects. And so we want to make sure that we continue to invest in our faculty. And so that statement is certainly endorsed.
He's a good teacher.
If I may, Dr. Williams, we along with what Dr. Jones stated, we are strongly committed to salary adjustments. And to that end, I've asked Dr. Pickett to work with Dr. Jones from the Board of Trustees perspective to make sure that our salaries are competitive, and those that have been there for as long as Dr. Jones are equally compensated, equitably compensated. So we'll be addressing those issues. We want to be competitive. We want to be able to hire the very best that's available to us and to reward those that have committed all these years to the university. So we'll be working on that effort.
Outstanding, outstanding. And the variable, the paradigmatic viewpoint Dr. Jones is trying to present is that Dr. Hugini really worked very hard and was very successful, but we were addressing salary compression. You know, we've got to pivot now to also address market compatibility. And that's a different level of thinking in order for us to be able to compete and do the type of academic excellence that we endeavor. And so I thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Ugeni. Thank you, Board of Trustees. And thank you, Dr. Jones, who is one of the most capable faculty senate presidents in the nation. So thank you. Now, Dr. Jones, you can take that and make note of that. That's in the record.
Okay, well, that would conclude our presentation. I'll turn it back to you.
Mr. Chairman, I had one other comment from this committee. You know, I'm most impressed by the report of Dr. Roper. That area is an area that is in such need by not only the university people, but the community at large. And in thinking of Dr. Gibson, are there opportunities to monetize this by taking it more broadly for community workshops or marketing it beyond the university community? Because the need is tremendous. And with what's about communication now being by digital means, it's important that we be able to communicate effectively, you know, in that arena. So Dr. Roper, I don't know what capacity you have there, and Dr. Williams being in agreement and the president, but I would love to see the opportunity to spread that more broadly.
Yeah. Can I just say one thing that I'm I get a firsthand experience with Dr. Roper. I have a class with about 110 students, and she comes in and assists the students with how the writing, so I can focus on the content. And that happens throughout the university when she comes in and shares that expertise with the students. So it's much needed, and I'm a witness to it. She's helped the improvement of my students' grades. So I echo what you said.
Well, that's great information, especially being in the business sector. When you ask somebody to construct a letter or something like that, you'll be surprised that college graduates what type of product that you get. And so anything that we can do to increase writing skills is definitely needed. So I do appreciate that as well. I wasn't aware of that. So thank you. And that will complete our report, Dr. Williams.
Thank you, Trustee Watts. Mr. President, what do you suggest we do going into lunch? I know Dr. Jones will be serving, but how do we accomplish that, and what time do we get back?
I think right now we're only 30 minutes off.
That's student affairs.
Yeah, so I think we proceed. We'll just have lunch beginning at what is it, 1:30?
Okay.
No, 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
Yeah,
okay.
1 o'clock.
Okay. All right.
I think we proceed.
Go right ahead. Trustee Robinson, would you please, student affairs?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. We'll be very brief. Thank you, Academic Affairs, for your lengthy report. We really appreciate all the information that you have provided.
That's cool.
It was my fault.
I mean, but it's very necessary. It's very necessary.
It was my fault, Trustee Robinson.
So if you're late with eating your lunches, don't blame student affairs. But no, seriously, that's all important. And again, kudos to the great hire of Dr. Roper, who is well sought after in what she does. Not going to take long, but I want to also, I'm not sure if my co-chair is online, Trustee Cole. Is she there also?
No, sir.
Okay. Also on the committee, we have Trustee Ball, Pickett, Ball, Pickett, and Jelks. So right now I'll turn it over. And before I do, to Dr. Crosby, again, another kudos to Dr. Ugeni and Dr. Crosby for your leadership in providing the community for the location and the vaccine distribution. I have heard from so many people, including our elected officials, on how A&M is a part of this community and is constantly being a vital piece. And that was just kudos to you guys on that particular piece. So right now I'll turn it to our illustrious Vice President, Dr. Crosby.
Thank you, Trustee Robinson, and good afternoon, trustees.
Good afternoon.
And may I take a point of personal privilege before Dr. Crosby comes forward? I'm sure that all of you received the note, but I certainly want, as a part of the record, to congratulate President-elect, Dr. Gary Crosby, on going to another assignment, and we're just so proud that he has used the platform of Alabama A&M University for that launch. And so congratulations, and I just wanted that to be a part of the records.
And may I, Mr. President, commend you and your leadership in preparing future leaders. You know, I mention often that we are a university, a teaching, a training institution. So our job is to develop talent and make them available to others as they grow and develop and are ready for that. And want to keep that tradition going. And Dr. Jones and her mentorship program is starting at the earliest level, and you and the rest of the senior administrators are helping to hone them and develop them into future leaders. So I agree with your assessment, and I also congratulate and applaud Dr. Crosby for his work.
Mr. Pro Tem and President, I didn't really want to bring that up, but I think we need to change the bylaws, and we have to get a unanimous vote to allow Dr. Crosby to lead this university. But anyway, kudos to Dr. Crosby. He has done a phenomenal job. And again, kudos to Dr. Hugani for his mentorship throughout this process. So Dr. Crosby.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hugani and trustees. It's been an absolute pleasure to work alongside each of you in advancing the mission of Alabama A&M University. I'll take my time here with me as I journey to St. Elizabeth University in Morristown, New Jersey, to advance the mission there. I've had a wonderful, wonderful time here. And so thank you for your support as well as your guidance to advance the mission of Alabama A&M. As always, it is my pleasure to present several initiatives and services provided under the Division of Student Affairs and in collaboration with various internal colleagues and community supporters. This morning, we will hear from Mrs. Yvette Clayton, Director of Career Development Services, who will share how we are supporting students in career exploration as well as development, followed by Mrs. Carquista Slay, Interim Director of Health and Counseling, who will provide an update on our commitment to supporting the physical and mental health of students, in addition to updates on the university's COVID-19 testing and vaccination clinics. Mrs. Greer will provide an update on how we're engaging our students outside the classroom, and we will close with the report from Jelks on behalf of the Student Government Association. At this time, I'll invite Mrs. Clayton to the conversation to provide updates from Career Development Services.
Thank you, Dr. Crosby. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Thank you. So we started this academic year, we actually start planning in the summer. And I have to say this year has been, we've seen a noted increase in the demand for STEM and HBCU talent as a whole, given the increase on focus on DEI. And so we planned this calendar, as you can see, and we just continue to add as more opportunities were presented to us. Our focus was on meeting employer demand and working with forging more partnerships on campus in order to make sure that we have the students to meet that demand. Next slide, please. So we continued our partnership with the Freshman Academy. We hosted 2-day ORI orientations. One was with the ORI 101 students, in which we provided a general overview of CDS and a personality assessment for students to help either confirm that they've chosen the right major or help them to realize that they might need to think about it and come to talk to their career counselor. With the ORI 102 students, we also provided an overview of CDS, but on the first day, we did a workshop on email protocol and just the importance and how to communicate with faculty or employers. And on the second day, we helped students to actually create an email signature line. Next slide, please. Sometimes we wonder if students check email. When we had more than 100 students to sign up for the free headshots, we realized that they do. And the things that are very important to them are the things to which they most respond. So in a socially distanced way, we were able to use the Student Health and Wellness Center gym And we had students to take advantage of the free headshots. Next slide, please. So Career Preparedness Week was a great opportunity for us to offer our industry and government cluster members and our career fair sponsors an opportunity to engage with students. That's what employers continue to ask for. So we had a workshop called Your Virtual Brand, which was facilitated by someone from Lockheed Martin. Next slide, please. The next day, we did something called Ace the Interview and strategies that result in offers. We actually had, this was cluster led, and Mike Gordon, who is a corporate vice president at Lockheed Martin, was very actively engaged in that workshop. Fortunately, we had 2 faculty members that really got behind this. So the student turnout was fantastic with 60. They zoomed in, they asked a lot of questions, and 2 students to volunteer for STAR interview question critiques. And for their bravery and initiative, they were awarded a $20 gift card. Next slide. Okay. We had an event called Meet the Cluster. And while the attendance wasn't as strong as it could have been, the impact was significant. We started off with a different format, just how are you doing? And students expressed how they were feeling at that time, which ranged from, excited to feeling overwhelmed. And so the cluster members were really able to listen to the students and kind of hear where they are. We concluded with breakout sessions, breakout rooms for the employers. And so we had Amazon, we had CGI, we had Denso, and we had the Boeing Company. And Pat Burton, which is in the second column, second row, he's the newest member of the cluster, thank you. And he's a recently retired Major General from the Army and an A&M alum, having majored in computer science. So it's a really good way for him to connect with the cluster members and with the students. Next slide, please. We decided to try something more interactive since students are feeling very zoomed out. So we launched a shoot your shot kind of elevator pitch competition. We had 15 students to sign up for this, and our career fair sponsors and cluster members served as judges. And it was exciting to see that we had a communication science disorder student and a communications media major to win the first place prize. The second place was for a logistics major, and the third place went to a biology major. So, and that was our goal, to make sure that all students on campus see the impact and the benefit of connecting with career development services. And the judges really enjoyed it. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, there's a tremendous increase in demand for our students, and we continue to have record-breaking employer participation. So based on the fall event, we decided to try a slightly different format for the spring event. So overall, you can see we had 453 students. Next slide, please. So we decided to split it up based on a survey that we administered to employers. We had a STEM speed networking event and a STEM career fair that had 102 employers registered. Next slide, please. And then we had a best speed networking event and a best career fair. All of this was done in 1 week. So it was pretty intense for us. We had 70 employers, and best stood for business and creative, education, social or behavioral sciences, talent. So we split it up so that it didn't feel so overwhelming for students to talk to that many employers at one time. Now, at that time, when this was submitted, YMTF was on board. We have since held that event. We continue to have strong faculty support, and we had 102 classroom presentations on the Hoover platform. We've also continued with the events that you see on the side, which are really designed to make sure that students across all colleges feel the support. We had a Work It Wednesday event yesterday, and with the Disney company, and thanks to one of the faculty members in the Family and Consumer Science Department, we had almost 50 students to participate in that. And just the last quick note, and we'll talk about this going forward, but the USDA has a big opportunity to hire. They have hiring authority. So we are hosting an event for them at which A&M, FAMU, Tennessee State, and Tuskegee will be invited, but we offered to set it up for the USDA. And CDS is actually planning a small private mini career fair so that the employers that have participated this year that still have opportunities will be able to connect with our students. Next slide, I think that's it. Thank you. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Clayton, to you and your team for your commitment and innovative way of delivering career options to our students. At this time, I'm going to ask Mrs. Slay to please present, but before, I just want to publicly acknowledge the work of the team at the Student Health and Counseling Center throughout this pandemic. From testing to continuing their day-to-day services and now running the vaccination clinic, and the way in which they're able to deliver these services with ease and effectiveness is most impressive. So Mrs. Slade, thank you to you and your team. And at this time, I'll turn the presentation over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Crosby. Good afternoon, everyone. If you could advance the slide, please, we'll go ahead and jump right into it. So I want to get into the re-entry testing that we did at the beginning of January for faculty, staff, as well as students. So we had about 69% negative. We had about 28% of faculty and staff that did not get tested during that time. They might have come a little bit later and got their testing done. However, they did not test at the mass testing event at the beginning of the semester. Advanced slide, please. The re-entry testing for our residential students, again, there were about 12% that were not tested, and that could have been because they had a later move-in date, and we eventually did test 100% of all residential students, but we had 88% of students that were negative at the beginning of the semester, so that is phenomenal in terms of our cases on campus. If you could advance slide, please. The types of tests that we have been using over the past year have been the Binax Now, the rapid test, and that provides students with results within 15 minutes. They do not have to wait for those test results. Also, we used our LabCorp as our PCR test, and we send those off, and LabCorp has been pretty good about returning those results to us within 3 to 4 days. Advanced slide, please. All right, so going forward, we decided to ensure that our campus community remained safe, and we did the mass testing. We actually just completed mass testing the end of last week. However, we have some makeup days for the few students that did not test during those times for whatever reason. But we have tested about 1,058 of our residential students. I think there are approximately 1,700 students on campus. So they actually have until March 30th to get that test done. And thus far, what we are noticing is that our numbers are remaining very low, not only with our positive cases, but with the cases that we have to place in quarantine as compared to last semester. We will also advance to doing our commuter students, as well as faculty and staff before the semester closes out. Next slide, please. So how do we manage all of this quarantine and isolation? The COVID prevention and response team has been meeting daily. We have reduced those meetings just because of the number of students that we have on quarantine has tremendously reduced. However, we meet regularly and we discuss those cases. We also ensure that students' meals are arranged in collaboration with campus housing, residential life and housing. Shout out to Carla Miller and her team for assisting with that. We also have our Department of Public Safety on board, as well as our student support services and our faculty representative. But we monitor those students, and we also provide counseling services to those students who are having difficulty coping with the quarantine and isolation, because we have seen an increase in anxiety and depression amongst those students. We also ensure that if those students have some needs, like maybe a thermometer or they have some mild symptoms, we can provide them door-to-door delivery services. We will have a medical staff go to that room and provide that student with their needs. So we are ensuring that their needs are met, provided that they allow us, they let us know that those needs are there. And they do that by completing a daily monitoring form, which confirms that they have been receiving meals. And if they are having any symptoms, we can address those at that time. Next slide, please. So again, we have the COVID prevention and response team that we meet, and we deal with some of the more quarantine and isolations, but ongoing, we are continuing to provide educational sessions regarding COVID prevention. We are educating on the vaccine as well as promoting the vaccine. We did a town hall with staff from UAB, some of our medical doctors from UAB, and we were pleased that they were able to join us for that effort. And so we did discuss the vaccines. We have been continuing to do temperature monitorings across campus. We are continuing to encourage the guide safe passports prior to entering any building. And from my understanding, the students are, especially our residential students that eat in the caf, are good about presenting their passports. We're continuing to do informational posts as well as promoting masks and sanitizers. And we offer those at every event that we do, as well as at our mass testing and our daily testing for our athletes. And so again, those numbers are looking really good. So I'm pleased with the response of the students and their willingness to participate. They have been pleasant. They have been doing their part. And so this still would not be possible if the students weren't doing their part as well. Next slide, please. All right, so moving into the vaccination plans, and there have been a couple of updates since this presentation was put together, but we are pleased that we have been approved as a vaccination site, and we are 2 weeks into actually providing those vaccines. We are 1 week into providing those vaccines for the community. We started that on Tuesday of this week, and so we were really happy to offer that to the general community. We have to date, as of yesterday, we have vaccinated 911 people. So that is really good within the 2 week span. We are taking a conservative approach to the vaccines because we want to ensure that we have enough as we wait on our next shipment. And we are anticipating that our next shipment will come around April the 1st. But we will continue to get people on schedule, and we will continue to proceed as that supply is made available to us. What we are seeing is that we have about 2% of people that have come through have identified as Caucasian. 98% of the people that we have vaccinated have been people of color. We are happy to be able to offer this to the community, but let me tell you, we are not doing it by ourselves at the Health and Counseling Center. This would not be possible without having the support of the UAH nursing students. They have offered us some additional hands as vaccinators for our clinics on certain days. And I will go ahead and tell you those dates are Monday from 4 to 7 p.m., Tuesday from 8 to 12 p.m., 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., Wednesday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., and Thursday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. And that schedule will go on until at least April 30th. At that time, we will look at possibly continuing that schedule or even expanding that schedule at some point as we move into the summer when there are not as many students on campus.
Mrs. Slay.
Yes.
I want to make sure that we're clear. That's by appointment only.
That is by appointment only. Yes, there has been some confusion and we've done a little damage control to get that. But I am happy to say that we have had very few walk-ins this week after really pushing that information out there. But please ensure that if you are sharing the information that you are saying by appointments only, it is very important that we stick to that, because again, we want to ensure that we have enough vaccines for the people that have registered to cover us until our next shipment.
Ms. Slade.
Yes.
Chris Robinson, quick question. So who will schedule the second shot? Is that the person or the team will schedule the next shot?
So once you come in to get your first vaccine, when you leave the clinic that day, you will have your second appointment in hand. So you are getting that on site. You will not have to do anything to get that second appointment except for receive your first vaccine.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Someone asked me to repeat the test date. So that's going to be Monday evening from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Also Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday mornings from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. And that is by appointment only. And that will go on until April 30th. Okay, next.
Question about the vaccine and compensation. Are we able to be compensated for the non-students as the CVS's and Walgreens and other private doctors are able to be compensated for giving the vaccines?
So right now, the vaccines are free. They're made available for free. They have provided us with the medication as well as all PPE and syringes to do those vaccines. So we are not charging anything for those vaccines. Most places are in a position to bill insurance for the actual administration of the vaccine. However, we are not in a position to do that for non-students.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So in addition to the COVID prevention and response efforts, in addition to the, of course, the testing and the vaccine clinic, we are continuing to push full speed ahead with our regular offerings. We still have our daily clinic that is going on, and that has been modified a little bit to accommodate the needs of the vaccination clinic, but we are still serving students in that capacity. We are still doing our virtual programming. We will have our Laugh the Blues Away video viewing tonight. So we are continuing to do all those programs, and the students are continuing to be engaged, and we're excited to be able to offer that. Next slide, please. I think that may be some of the other things that we've been doing. We're continuing to push the suicide prevention efforts. We know that during this time, our students are at an increased risk for anxiety and depression. And so we are still making some social media posts, and we're putting that information out there to let them know that we are available for them if they need someone to talk. And I am pleased that our students are using and utilizing that service. Next slide, please.
Ms. Slade, do we ever have any faculty or staff that utilize that service? And is that even possible? Over. So
we have had faculty and staff to reach out to us, but we encourage all faculty and staff to use the employee assistance program that has been made available to us through the university. So we try to reserve our services for the students.
Okay, thank you.
And that concludes my presentation. Any additional questions or concerns?
I just have a question about, are a lot of students using the counseling services? Because, you know, culturally, we have a lot of students who don't believe in asking for help when they may need it, but are you finding that the students at A&M are utilizing the services?
Yes, ma'am. It is increasing. The students are increasing their utilization of the services, and that just comes with the more outreach we do, the more feedback we get. And so I think that's the key, is for us to continue to be out there in their face, letting them know we are here, letting them know that counseling is okay. It's okay to talk to someone, and also approaching it in a non-threatening way by offering some of these fun programs that they deem as fun or interesting. And by way of, we may capture a few that will come in for counseling sessions after that.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Slay. And that's a great question, Trustee Pickett. And we'll be sure to have data for the next board meeting, Mrs. Slay. If you can pull that data over the last few years, we put forth effort to remove that stigma, particularly as it relates to counseling. So we'll be glad to present data for the next board meeting. Again, thank you to Mrs. Slay and her team and our community partners for the work that you're doing to protect our students and community, as well as our faculty and staff from COVID-19, while supporting their mental and physical health. At this time, I'm going to ask Ms. Greer to provide a brief update on student activities and leadership development. And as you see here, I also asked Ms. Monica Clark. And so Trustee Robinson, this will get us back on track. You heard from Ms. Clark in the Academic Affairs Subcommittee meeting, but I just want to acknowledge the work of the Civic Engagement Task Force and the work that they're doing to engage our students in the democratic process. A lot of our programming, our student activities centered around civic engagement over the last couple of years. And so you had an opportunity to hear from Ms. Clark regarding that. And so I'm going to ask Ms. Greer to walk us through other programs and activities hosted by the Office of Student Activities and Leadership Development. Ms. Greer?
Thank you, Dr. Crosby. Next slide, please. NVHC membership intake for spring 2021. Organizations participated in MIP this semester was Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, Delta Sigma Theta sorority, Zeta Phi Beta sorority, fraternities Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, Phi Beta Sigma fraternity, and Omega Psi Phi fraternity. The intake process window of time was February 1st to March 24. All programs were virtual process, online, hybrid, in compliance with AD and PH and CDC guidelines. No new members presentations. Next slide, please. Black History Month 2021 on the Hill. We kicked off and we started our programming from February the 9th all the way to the end of the month. We started off with Black History Tribute. Moving forward, guess that track. From the Shapers to the New Makers, love language for our Valentine's. Going into the 22nd, civic engagement hosted a week of events such as voter registration, check your status, how your one voice matters. We had a presentation by Black Presentation Matter by attorney Shanitha Straw out of Chicago, Illinois. Black Men Talk, mental health discussion, HBCU Queens roundtable. And we had what we called a decade dance party for various decades of music. So that would conclude a lot of our Black History Month programs. It was the programs were consist of all of our organizations, fraternities, and sororities. Thank you.
Okay, and again, you heard from Ms. Clark earlier this morning, but I want to spend just a little more time on civic engagement. You see the numbers on the screen before you, and again, outstanding work by our civic engagement task force, which is led by Ms. Clark, but also includes cross-departmental individuals such as Ms. Erica Washington, as well as Dr. Tanya Perry, and they work in collaboration with various supporters from across campus and in the community to educate our students on the democratic process and get them out when it's time to vote. And we saw a significant increase in the number of voters in the last presidential election than in the previous election. And so that work, again, is as a result of this task force. I also want to step back a minute and just quickly reference membership intake for this spring semester. We wanted our students to have some sort of college experience. And unfortunately, last spring, we had to transition them home and to remote instruction, and quite a few of them in the middle of membership intake for their organization of interest. And so we made the strategic decision to allow organizations to submit a request for membership intake, with the only criteria being that they had to ensure that they followed CDC guidelines. So either a full virtual membership intake or a hybrid membership intake. And with the hybrid, that's a mixture of online and in person. And if they're meeting in person, if they have a fairly large new member class, then we ask that they break that class up to meet the capacity limits on rooms that we have available to them. And we have ways of tracking that to make sure that they're actually following those protocols in place. And so far, they've done extremely well. Very proud of our students, as well as the advisory team and the efforts in student activities and leadership development to keep our students safe while giving them some sort of undergraduate experience. Any questions for student activities or regarding student activities and leadership development? Okay, if not, that concludes our presentation. I would like to, before we go into the report from the Student Government Association, go back to Trustee Ball. I believe you had a question regarding Aramark dining, and so I can take that question at this point.
Yeah, I was just going to make the request as we move forward. We know we've had to change how the dining service was offered this current semester and last. But as we move forward, to look and have a true assessment of the quality of the dining services and the taste of the food offered at both the West Campus dining room and also Foster. And I was going to ask to see if there was some type of survey of the students that can provide feedback, to Aramark, and maybe they would be able to present what the students themselves were saying about the service. And we know they could probably include all of the renovations that we've made to West. They can give some feedback into the things they're pleased with and things that we can continue to possibly enhance. So I was going to request if there was any type of survey that could be done and completed with the students, definitely going into the fall semester.
Trustee Ball, since you're on campus a good bit, could you give us your observations and experiences thus far, and that may help inform all of us what the experiences have been?
The feedback that I'm getting from different students, just being on campus, is that the services offered at the Foster dining hall is not commensurate with what is being offered at the West. Some of that may be to space and the ability to provide some of the different types of offerings that they do at the West is not being offered at Foster, which obviously alludes to a smaller percentage of people wanting to dine at that particular dining room, one. And then secondly, just the overall quality or taste of the food, specifically on the weekends. There's a drop-off between during the week and during the weekend. So I just wanted to ask the administration or the leadership just to kind of look into that and allow for you all to get your feedback directly from students in regards to the service of the food that they're having on campus.
Great recommendation, Trustee Ball. A couple of things there. Students are able to submit real-time feedback to Aramark. There's a survey option where if they complete it within the next hour or so, those results are sent to Mrs. Wilson in Aramark, and changes are made based on what comes in there. We also do an annual survey, which is out now, and there is a small incentive to excite students about completing that survey. And that incentive range from $150 gift card to, I believe, an Amazon gift card and a few things in between. But we'll make sure that we have that data for the next board meeting. I also want to point out that Foster dining complex is set to undergo a $2 million renovation beginning in early May. And so with that renovation, we anticipate being able to offer a lot of the same options or similar options to what students receive in the night complex as well. But please, as you come across those students, encourage them to complete that survey. I know Mrs. Wilson, she meets regularly with the Student Government Association. I meet regularly with the Student Government Association to discuss any concerns or issues. And we want to be attentive to those needs, because we understand that students need full stomachs to go in the classroom and learn. And so you have that commitment, and we'll provide that data for the next board meeting.
Dr. Crosby, is it possible, in addition to them responding to the survey via electronically, would they be able to include an actual individual at the dining room service, that maybe with a clipboard and maybe having that interaction to maybe even increase the participation, or increase the sample pool?
That's an option we can consider. Much like you see when you're in your favorite store, you have someone there with an iPad or of some sort. Although we need to be careful in light of COVID, just thinking through how we're safely able to do that. But that is a fair request, and we'll look into it.
Dr. Crosby, we also could look at possibly a kiosk that could be set there. It doesn't require a person, but if they're like real-time comments that could be placed, as they leave the cafeteria about their experience, that would kind of help the situation, hopefully.
All right, thank you. All right. If there are no more questions at this time, I'll invite Trustee Jelks to the conversation to give an update on behalf of
Mr. Cross, before you do, I did not comment on one of the earlier presentations on student health and student well-being. A suggested approach, if you're not using it, is those students that have been helped and have overcome those challenges. If you were to engage them to help to spread the word to other students, even if you incentivize them, because those are the ones that will be trusted more than a faculty or administrative person. So those individuals that have been helped by your counselors and are willing to share that, I think you can get the message out there much more broadly.
Thank you, Ms. Lay. Thank you, Trustee Williams. Trustee Jelks, are you there?
I am.
Okay. All right. Your update on behalf of the Student Government Association.
All righty. Well, good afternoon, everyone. As stated, I am Joffrey Jelks, the Executive President for the 2020-2021 academic school year for the Student Government Association. My platform thus far has not changed. I'm still leaning hard and strong on creating your own legacy. Our initiatives have still remained the same as far as increasing student engagement and providing an enhanced university cultural experience. And although we have not found too much on the increased access to post-secondary test prep material, we have been given a few different programs. A huge thank you to Ms. Yvette Clayton, who's on here, in the CDS department, as they send me countless opportunities, and I share with my fellow Bulldogs as well. So thank you to them for that. As far as it goes for increasing student engagement, of course, we are slowly working our way into doing in-person events, of course, by following the CDC guidelines for COVID-19, as the pandemic is still a huge thing. Dr. Swoop, if we could pull up the pictures for me, please. As stated in the last meeting that we had for fall 2020 events, we did work with the civic engagement team as far as voter registration drives went. We actually got a chance to actually be down there on the courthouse. If any of you all, my friends on social media, I'm sure you all have seen the pictures, and even that picture in the middle that you all were seeing. On the first slide, this picture in the middle where you all actually see us holding the vote sign, that is a few of the SGA representatives. We were actually outside of the Elmore Gymnasium helping people go inside and vote, and just enjoying the time with the students that we did have. We had a lot more pictures out there. Dr. Yugini, Mrs. Yugini was there, I believe. Took pictures with her as well. As presented earlier, we did do Black History Month events. As you all can see, the flyer for the attorney that we had, Attorney Shanita Straw, who's from my hometown. That was a great event. We had a great turnout. They actually have requested that she comes back at some point in time. We actually have the Zoom recorded. I plan on sharing that once approved. As you all can see in this picture of me having the time of my life with my mask on, that comes from when we had our talent show in fall 2020. And at that time, we also had an Aux Core Awards. You'll see a few videos from that as well. We had a karaoke night, and we also got a chance to have a concert with, as stated before, Key Glock. If the videos can be played, those are just a few videos from, you know, when we actually allowed our students to be in person and things of that nature. As you all can see by the videos, we were having a grand time. As far as it goes for previously held events for this year, for this semester, spring 2021, we, as stated before, that our Black History Month, our Black History Trivia, the event with Shania Straw, and we also had another event towards the end of February where we had another attorney from Atlanta, Georgia, come on and speak. I can't remember his name, but we do have a flyer that was sent out. He was great as well. He kind of helped a lot of our young male students who were actually going into law. So that was a great experience for them and myself. And a few of my senators actually got a chance to put on a mental health forum in early March. So that was pretty great. We had a good turnout with that as far as young men coming across the campus and onto our actual Zoom platform and actually being comfortable with the idea of discussing their mental health as we move and progress into a time that mental health is beginning to be taken more serious and being looked upon in deeper context amongst the African American community. We also had a chance to do every Sunny Wednesday, if you are familiar with that, where we allow students to come out on the quad and just, you know, congregate. Of course, we're socially distanced and kept our mask on at all times. And I got the opportunity to have a great team behind me that actually helped me enforce that masks were up and kept on at all times. We had a few faculty members come out that were actually, you know, observing and make sure that we were following guidelines and things of that nature. For our future plans, as of today, we have had a meeting with Academic Affairs and Freshman Academy as far as to how can we help our freshman students transition into their departments more smoother than before, because everybody is not as strong-headed as myself and my administration, where, you know, some of us are naturally born with a go-get-it attitude, and some of us need a little bit of help and a little more hand guiding. So we were trying to figure out different ways that we can actually make that information more accessible to them. Because yes, we can tell our students to go and look on our website, but a lot of times we become accustomed to getting information emailed to us. So sometimes we look for emails instead of looking on the website because we don't know exactly what to look for on our website. So we, again, are still in the talks of that. We just had our first meeting, I want to say last week or the week before, and it went pretty well. A lot of ideas were heard and discussed. So I'm very confident that moving forward, that before the end of the semester and before I leave, we will have some type of transition set up for our students to be much more smoother. And we've also talked about the works of incorporating different things into freshman academies, their orientation classes, as far as, you know, more African-American history beyond just the school's history and, you know, surrounding our school, because there's a lot of African-American history that surrounds us in the state of Alabama that a lot of us are not familiar with. And as stated, we are in the final stages of planning our new SGA administration to come in. So yes, my time is coming to an end. As of Monday, we had our interest meeting for the Student Government Association, and we are now gearing up for campaign week, and we are about to work with the people over Blackboard so we can get our application back up and running for students. And hopefully by this next meeting, you all will have a president who is better than me and is hardworking as I am. And, you know, again, excuse me if I get caught up in my words. It's just hitting me that my time is coming to an end here, as you all have been a great support system to me. Thank you all for allowing me to be here. And as the end of my report says, long live thy fame. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Trustee Jelks, and outstanding work by you and your leadership team, and as well as your peers. You know, we meet often and we talk about things that you all would like to see happen. And so with all things considered, you've done an outstanding job leading the student body this year and being the voice of the student body. Dr. Ugeni, unfortunately, COVID prevented me from sinking my hands into Trustee Jelks. So he's committed to going to medical school and not into student affairs. And so we certainly looking forward to his journey there. But Trustee Jelks, we'll have further conversations about how your desire to become a world-renowned OBGYN can certainly influence student affairs and higher education as a whole.
You just won't give up, will you?
No, not yet. And before I forget, I did see Ms. Miller on here. I definitely wanted to send a thank you to her as well for meeting with the Student Government Association 2 weeks ago, where we actually discussed the upcoming housing portal and how we open up for students. So to Ms. Miller, thank you so much for being a listening ear and actually considering our ideas, because oftentimes we get the idea that faculty and staff don't really hear us, but they hear us. They see what we say, but they don't really listen. And at that moment in time, we actually felt heard and our ideas were actually appreciated and understood. And hopefully when the time comes for students to begin to move back onto campus again, unfortunately, you won't have the great hands of me to help, but you will have the hands of my team here, and those that come up after me will be just as great. So thank you again.
Trustee Jelks, I want you to know that we certainly do appreciate all that you did this year. It's been a different time for all of us. Obviously, no one around on this Zoom has ever lived through anything like this. And so it was a matter of finding a way to proceed in very uncharted waters. So I commend you. You did a wonderful job, and we look forward to the great things that we know you will do in the future.
Thank you.
Chairman Robinson, that concludes the report from Student Affairs.
Thank you, and thank you, Trustee Jelks, for your leadership. Dr. Crosby, thank you for your leadership and your staff, and for all you do to set the university to higher levels, and your collaboration with your colleagues across the campus as well. Pro Tem, this is all we have. I'm sorry.
Trustee Robinson, I just want to say, Dr. Crosby sounds presidential right now. He really does. I'm impressed. And Dr. Crosby, you are acting as a president, as I've witnessed. You really deserve what's about to happen, because you sounded, you acted, you are intelligent, you're smart, and man, what a awesome presentation to conclude.
Thank you so much, Trustee Williams.
Dr. Crosby, is it the glasses? I noticed you've changed your wardrobe up already, so I'm just, is that a presidential look? I mean, what's going on here? All right, that's all I have, Pro Tem.
Well, we cannot move forward until Dr. Crosby answers your question, Trustee Robinson. Then ask the president how we're going to move forward with lunch.
Yeah, okay.
This might
Crosby?
be Superman. My changing outfit. It might be.
Dr. Crosby, sometimes they don't recognize achievement.
There you go.
See now, don't get on the bad side. Now we're not gonna put fraternities in this. We're gonna leave that alone, because your president is.
I digress. I digress.
All right, Mr. President, are you delivering some catfish and what have you?
Yes, it should be at your door shortly.
Hey, right now I'm at the Magic City Classic, so I'm just waiting to see. All right, thank you.
You've got back 15 minutes.
How long, Mr. President?
You've got back 15 minutes.
Okay, yeah, we did. Efficient presentation, Trustee Robinson and Dr. Crosby.
Yes,
thank you.
It's lunchtime, so we'll get back at
the usual time, at scheduled time.
1:30?
I think it was scheduled for 1:30, so we'll come back at 1:30. Yes.
We'll see everyone back at 1:30.
Very good. Everyone continue, particularly this area, please continue to monitor the weather.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Very good.